Well, hello everyone. And guess what? It's been 1 year since I've made my first video. Can you believe it? And look at this amazing uh, Google Slides presentation that I've made to show you all. Um, I guess it's a reflection. What is this video? It's a reflection on the past year. Also talking about the future. And I'm also going to react to every video that I've seen. And I'm going to do a tier list of all the videos. So if you're not interested in some parts of this, then probably look at the timestamps and click on what you want to watch. But let's get to it. So, starting with a bunch of stats. So, this is from December 16th, 2021 to December 15th, 2022. So, ever since my first video in 2021. But so I had a goal for this year. Well, I guess ever since I started my December 16th, I've had one goal, which is to make 26 videos. And that was back when I only had one channel, so scripted videos. But what ended up happening in reality was that I made 14 scripted videos and 23 unscripted videos. So it's not exactly what I wanted, but I will count this as a success because I made way more than I needed to. And I guess these unscripted videos take probably either as much or maybe take up more time to make because of all the stuff you have to watch and you have to keep notes and everything. And I don't know, but that's the reality. So three of this content, I had 3 hours of content on Elite Ari, and these are all my beautiful little thumbnails here. 47 hours of content on Ordinary Ari, which was 23 videos, and these are my amazing, beautiful thumbnails here. And 24 hours on Secondary ENT, which is Kyle Entertainment's second channel. Go check him out. So yeah, we had a bunch of series on there as well. 18 videos for that. So in total, there was around 74 hours of content, of which around 35 hours I would estimate that I'm speaking, because when there's a few people, like say for instance, if there's 2 people, I'm really speaking for half the time. If there's 3 people or more, I'm probably speaking for much less than a third of the time, probably maybe 10 to 15% of the time. But anyway, that's what's happening here. My popularity stats. So in terms of subscribers, I've got 438 subs on Elite Ari and 90 on Ordinary Ari, and this is my beautiful graph that I graphed of all my subscribers that I've gained over time. You can tell when there's a Mushoku Tensei video that comes out because there's a big leap. Like I think there was my first one here, and then the second one here. There's a giant leap. Because I think the second Mushoku Tensei video, when that started getting popular, the first one also got popular, so I got subscribers from both of them. And here, the final Mushoku Tensei video here. But I'm getting there, almost 500 subs. It's exciting. I wouldn't have expected I would have got this much when I first started, like at least in 1 year. It's been very quick. Mushoku Tensei kind of took me by surprise by how popular it was, but anyway. So yeah, more popularity stats. So in terms of views, I got 9k views on Ordinary Ari, and I got 38k views on Elite Ari, so pretty fun. 32k of those views come from Mushoku Tensei, so I'm a very Mushoku Tensei dominant channel. 4k on Attack on Titan, 1k on my series of reflecting on every anime I've seen videos, and then 1k on everything else. So Vinland Saga, Hunter x Hunter, Arcane, and any other videos I made. So these are the views over time. So you can't actually see this in the analytics as far as I was aware, so I had to download them and manually plot this. But yeah, for each video I've kind of plotted from its release, the number of days it's been since I uploaded it, how many views has it gotten, and these 3 big ones here you can see, the 3 Mushoku Tensei ones, and all my other nonsense videos down here at the bottom. Yeah, it's just a fun thing to see. Now, in terms of the actual scripts themselves on Elite Ari, I've written 34,000 words across all the Elite Ari videos, which honestly, it feels kind of small, in terms of the amount of hours I've got versus the words, but it's a lot of words, probably the most I've written for a single kind of domain, I guess. So if you look at only the unique words, I've used 4,500 unique words in these 34,000. And my average word length is 4.4. So, I'm a giant gigabrain genius who uses almost 5 letters in every word. And if you're looking at my 13 scripted videos over time, these are the number of words in each of those videos. So you can see the 3 outliers here are the 3 30-minute long reflecting all the anime videos I've seen, all the animes I've seen, and all these other ones here. But I think that's all. Yeah, and this is every word I've ever written in any scripted video, and I just scrolled through it and made a video of it. So here we go. Yeah, that's the end. But yeah, so that's the stats. Now, plans for 2023. So a new year coming, second year of YouTube. Crazy. My first goal is to get at least 1 scripted video every 2 weeks. And unlike last year where I specified 26 videos, which is kind of like, it comes down to one video every 2 weeks, right? But this one, I kind of want to do it every 2 weeks so that I can upload it on the same time or same day and maybe same time every second week, so that it's kind of a consistent thing where people can be like, oh, there should be a new Elite Ari video coming out soon, you know? I think that would be very handy, or very, very good for building like a community, not a community, but like having people keep my channel in their mind, I guess. Second goal is to also do a monthly media digest. So this year I tried one episode of a digest type video with Vinland Digest, where I watched a bunch of YouTube videos for Vinland Saga. But I kind of want to continue that, but I don't want to limit it to Vinland Saga. I want to try and limit it to a bunch of YouTube, basically any YouTube video I watch in that month, and also any media I consume in that month. So not just YouTube videos, so things like books and games and just TV shows and movies, everything basically. So once a month, hopefully we'll get one of those. That's my goal. And also, I want to get at least one scripted video for at least the following 3 shows when they're airing. So there's Mushoku Tensei, Attack on Titan, and Vinland Saga. So while they're airing, hopefully I can get at least one scripted video out for each of these, and I think they'd hopefully be pretty popular if, at least while they're airing, you know? Like the only thing I've ever made while it's airing is my Ymir video, I think, from Attack on Titan, and I think that was a bit late as well. Hopefully I can do these while they're straight away, like when the episode airs. Anyway, I also want to branch out a bit. Like if you look at my channel banner, or even maybe my Twitter banner or something, I think my slogan is like, oh, I make videos about things I find interesting. But so far, apparently everything I've ever found interesting in my life is anime and manga. So I want to branch out and make at least one AI or programming related video. And the channel that I'm really interested to like kind of not replicate, but like kind of inspired by is Carry KH. He makes a lot of really cool like programming related videos, like the evolution related videos and stuff. I think they're really cool. I'd like to make something like that this year. And also I'd like to make a at least one like educational or like explanation video, science and technology related, similar to like a Vsauce or like in a nutshell kind of video. Like there's, I am a, like I've got, I'm a computer science graduate and PhD student. So I have some stuff that hopefully I could like provide a novel like perspective. But yeah, so I think that'd be fun to do a video on that. Now, these are the goals where they're completely out of my control. I have no control over these, but if things are going well, then hopefully I will see something like this. But honestly, I've got no control over this whatsoever. So that's at least 1,000 subscribers by the end of next year. I think that's pretty achievable. Like I'm halfway there. If I keep doing videos every 2 weeks, like I'm hoping to do, then I'm pretty confident I'll get to that. With a stretch goal of 5K. So if I get lucky with like 1 or 2 videos, if they hit like 100,000 views or something, I'm fairly confident like it'll only take that much to get the 5K views, hopefully. And I don't think this is very likely at all, but you know what? If I get lucky, you know, 1 or 2 videos, you never know. So that's what my dream goal there. And of course, 1,000 subs, what is it, 4,000 watch hours that I can get monetization. That'll be a big change. Then maybe I'll consider other things like Patreon or whatever, but I've got nothing on that on my radar at the moment. But another, like, if things are going well, like a goal out of my control, at the moment, I think my most viewed video has 20K views, which is crazy. Like, I never expected I would have got that, but seeing a 50K video would be cool this year, if possible. Like, I don't know, obviously I can't aim for this, it's just a goal out of my control, but that would be neat to see. And 50 Twitter followers, isn't that ambitious? I've currently got 30. If I get another 20 by the end of the year, that'd be great. Sorry, end of next year. But I don't know. I don't know how to really do that. But hopefully it'll happen. So things I'm definitely going to be doing next year, which aren't goals, they're just things I'm actually going to be doing. A media consumption list on Twitter. So there's a few of these out there. Miller, Bacon, Kyle, they've all have their own. So essentially, whenever I've seen a piece of media, so a game, a book, a movie, etc., I'll put it on Twitter. And maybe I'll put a rating. I'm not really sure how I'll format it. So by the end of the year, I'll have like a nice list I can go through. Maybe I'll make a video going through it or something and ranking it. Could be fun. But that's something I'm going to be doing starting from next year. Another thing is that I'm going to make maximal use of my scripted videos. So when I upload a video on Elite Ari, I will have that main video that I'll upload. and at the same time I'll crop it, not crop it, I'll cut it up and slice it into a short and a TikTok version that I'll upload on like two separate things. I'll upload the shorts on my channel and I'll upload that same thing to a TikTok channel. And at the same time, maybe I will, like, I'm thinking if this works out well, I will also do a BTS, like behind the scenes, like video unscripted, and then link it at the end of every video. So I'll be at the end, I'll get to an end of the scripted video and I'll be like, if you want to check out more, check out the behind the scenes on Ordinary Ari or something. And maybe that'll be good. I don't know. I'll try it once. If it works out well, I'll keep doing it. If it doesn't, then I guess I'll stop. But I think it's a fun idea. Another thing is, yeah, to get to that 50 follower goal on Twitter, I'll get a pinned comment telling people to follow me for Twitter, on Twitter for updates and opinions. Because I don't currently use the pinned comment for much. Maybe if I have like a collaboration I'm promoting or something, I'll put a pinned comment. But I think putting my Twitter there could be useful. Get some carryover to Twitter. Yeah, another idea is to put face cam for stuff, like I'm doing now. It won't be in the scripted video. Maybe a scripted videos, but I'm gonna try and do it for the unscripted videos, like I'm doing here. You can see me. But honestly, I don't know how good it is. If people like it, then I guess I can stick with it. But if I get, I guess if I don't get any feedback, then I'll keep doing it maybe. But if I get negative feedback, I'd stop. Or if I get positive, I don't know. I'll see how it goes basically. But it's in my consideration at least. And here I am in this video trying it out. Also, I'll finally get to the Utena Rewatch. So I watched one episode or two episodes, and then it's a combination of things. I just got busy with other stuff that I was doing, and it's just a pain to kind of do the Utena thing because I enjoy watching it, but because of all the copyright protection, you can't screenshot it, you can't screen record, so it's hard to get like screenshots that I can put into videos, and I don't know, it's just a hassle. But next year's the year I'm gonna do it, the Utena Rewatch. Another thing I'm going to do next year is talk more in group conversations. So when there's me and another person in like a two-person collaboration kind of video, it's easy. I can talk half the time. I always have things to talk about. But when it's like more than two people, I always struggle to kind of like talk over people. Like it's tough. Like I don't like doing that. But I'm going to try and do it more, because what usually happens is that like when there's two people, I'll talk like 50% of the time, and then when there's like three of us, I won't talk like 30% of the time. I'll probably talk like 10 or 15% of the time, you know. So I'm going to try and maybe talk a bit more in these group conversations. And also tweet more. Like I've said, Twitter is my weak point. I have I don't tweet much. I don't interact with many people. I think it would be fun to, like, I do know a lot of people on Twitter. Like I recognize names and I'm like, oh, they've commented on my videos and stuff. But I don't interact with them at all. So maybe I'll start interacting, upload more stuff, and you know, all that good community building stuff. Now I have a few planned videos that I've already got planned for the next year. So these are all unscripted collaborations. So I'm going to be going through Mushoku Tensei Season 2 with Jarky Bacon. We haven't really exactly figured out what we're going to do, but I would assume it's like a episode by episode discussion, hopefully. So check out Jarky Bacon. Then we're going to keep doing our Vinland Saga monthly chapters with Jarky Bacon and Kyle Entertainment. So if you want to see those, check out Kyle Entertainment's streams on Twitch, and he uploads those to Secondary ENT, his channel. Then we're gonna, I would assume we're also going to be doing Vinland Saga Season 2 with Jarky Bacon and Kyle Entertainment. Not sure exactly what we're doing, but no matter what, at least I'll be doing something on this, and I'm sure the other two will want to do something too. I'm also going through the Devilman manga soon with Kyle Entertainment. He's going to be rereading it, and I'm going to be reading it for the first time, and we'll probably make maybe one, maybe two videos on that, on Ordinary Ari. And Chainsaw Man, I'm watching the anime at the moment, but when the anime's done, I'm going to read through the manga, and Kyle's going to watch the anime and reread the manga as well, and that'll be interesting, and we'll talk about it. And finally, we will continue the great Attack on Titan reread with Kyle Entertainment and Riker7, and we will... I wonder, how much can we get through next year? We managed throughout, like, April to December, we managed 2 parts, 2 arcs, so maybe we can get 3 arcs next year, you know, that'd be great. But that's also coming up, exciting. And I guess I also have a few miscellaneous things. So my first is that I guess it's this thought I had about like, okay, let me frame this as a story, which is that I don't remember which YouTuber or streamer it was, but it was either Kyle Entertainment or Moist Critical, I think, where one of them had in their description or like a pinned comment or even in a video or something, they said that, like they said something along the lines of like, oh, I'm probably streaming right now. And like, come check me out on Twitch. You'll probably see me now. And I did, and I think they were streaming, and I was like, oh, this is really neat, you know? Like, once you're in the door, you're in the door. Like, they got me to go there, and I'm also there to talk to them, and it was cool. So I'm doing something like that. I don't know. I don't know what I would do, but something like that. Streaming is also something I'm interested in. Like, I do spend a lot of time gaming, like on my own even. And I'm like, oh, if I can just stream while I'm doing that instead of just playing on my own, it could be fun. So I'd be open to that. And maybe I could do other streams as well. Like the other day I tested a stream where I was like reading One Piece. That was fun. But I don't know. Another miscellaneous thought is like, how do people other than me interact with YouTubers or like keep up with them? Because I don't, like, I subscribe to people purely to like to support their channel, like to make their numbers go up basically. When I want to find out, like the way I interact is like, I'll be like, it'll be a Sunday and I'll be like, oh, it's today's Sunday. Usually a YouTuber, what did I write? Yeah, usually ex YouTuber has a new video, and then I'll type their channel in and I'll be like, have they uploaded their Sunday video? And it'll be like, yeah, and I'll watch it. So that's usually how I interact with it. I won't look at my sub feed or anything, but I wonder how many people do that, and if people really do look at their subscriptions, or they have other ways of like keeping track of when people are uploading. Like that's why another point why I think like consistency, like keeping always uploading on the same day is so important, because it's like, at least for me, that's how I find people. Like I'll be like, oh, it's a Saturday, Linus Tech Tips has his podcast, let me go check it out or something. Anyway, the last thing is community input. Like I think it's, at the moment, I've chosen all my videos and all my like series and stuff that I watch based on my own interests, but it could be fun to build like a community like Blindwave does with their polls, where they can like choose a series to react to partly based on their picks and partly based on the audience. It could be a fun thing to do. Like maybe that could be another thing I do on Twitter, where I put polls and see what type of content that people want, or even series that they want me to watch. It could be fun. But that's it. Part 1 of this is done. So now I'm going to react and rank or do a tier list of every single video that I've made, both scripted and all the unscripted series that are on my channel on Ordinary Ari. So see you then. All right, guess what? Now we're going to go through every single video and watch them. If I can think of anything insightful to say, I will say it. Otherwise, I'll probably cut this out of the video. And we'll see how it goes.
Throughout Attack on Titan, one memory is...
Jesus. Okay, so this was the first video I ever made. The narration is truly terrible, very monotone. But the point, I think, was pretty convincing. Something very original. Hey, I have comments. That's funny. Oh boy, what was the first comment I ever got? Nice video, great work. I hope you do more Attack on Titan analysis video. Well, I hope this person's happy, because I made like 2 other videos, but here we go. Let's just watch it. This is going to take a long time. Should I do double speed? No, I can't do double speed.
One memory is constantly resurfaced throughout the narrative. Not only is this memory one of Eren's key sources of motivation and one of the most important sources of insight into his character, but it also adds great thematic depth to the end of the entire Attack on Titan story, in a way that has been overlooked by many people.
Sound effects. My goodness. I had this genius idea. I was going to use sound effects in every video, but it took too much effort and I couldn't be bothered, and it really wasn't worth it. But here we are. And I also used the Attack on Titan font. I searched it up. I'm like, what font does Attack on Titan use? Let me put it in this video. But
so what
here
is
we
this
are.
memory, and how does it define Eren as a character? The first time we see it is all the way back in Chapter 4, right at the start of the Battle of Trostark. Eren, blinded by his bloodlust for the Titan who ate Thomas, gets his leg bitten off. In the moments that follow, Armin then witnesses many of his fellow scouts being crushed and eaten by Titans, until a bearded Titan picks him up and drops him in his mouth. Eren then flashes back to the memory in question, which is the...
So I wasn't cutting out the back, like the white background on these. That was too much effort. I kind of like the rapid editing here. It's a lot faster than what I've done more recently, where I'll like focus on a single panel, because it's easier to do when you have a single panel than like flashing through a bunch of them. And there's no animation whatsoever in this. This is just a very simple
the audience's first glimpse into this key
thing.
moment of his childhood. The memory begins with 2 large panels of Eren staring into the clouds, mouth wide open, with a blank, almost trance-like expression on his face. We then see Armin excitedly run up to Eren, explaining his grandfather's book about the outside world. At first, Eren seems hesitant to accept the things Armin is saying, but upon seeing the glint in his eyes, Eren begins reflecting Armin's excitement, as Armin says he hopes that they will explore the outside world together one day. Recalling this memory, and particularly the goal of together exploring the outside world, gives Eren the motivation to stand up on his one good leg, grab Armin out of the mouth of the bearded Titan, and keep fighting to survive. We see this memory referenced frequently throughout the remainder of the Battle of Trostark, acting as a source of motivation for Eren, reminding him that he fights so that he can freely explore the outside world. But it isn't...
That took so much effort to just track those chapters that it shows up in. And then also, it's terrible.
We get a thorough reframing of this memory.
Another beautiful sound effect.
At the beginning of the Return to Shiganshina arc, the scouts are walking through the forest at night, heading toward Shiganshina. Eren, shaking out of anticipation of what is to come, recalls the memory once again. But this time we get a key piece of information that makes this memory so important to defining Eren's character as a whole. We again start with two large panels of Eren staring into the clouds, with Eren's narration telling us that back in those days he had never thought about what was beyond the walls. All he did was spend his time looking at the clouds in the sky. Armin then comes running into frame, explaining his book about the outside world with a glint in his eyes. But what we see from Eren now is very different to the original depiction of this memory in Chapter 4. Eren does not reflect the excitement that Armin is exuding.
Yeah, it's my thumbnail. Except
Rather looks
edited
to
a
be in a
bit.
state of shock, as though his entire world has been shaken to the core. Eren then states plainly that this was the first time in his life that he realized that he wasn't free, and on realizing that, he viscerally knew that he could never forgive the ones that had taken his freedom away. At the time, the audience sees this as a triumphant moment for Eren. He stops shaking and is now ready to defeat the enemies that are ahead of him, the enemies that have taken away his freedom. We, the audience, are relieved to see that he is not losing his confidence as he did in the Uprising arc. He is remotivated by this reframed memory, and we are glad to once again hear his declaration of extermination against the Titans. But looking back, we now see this memory as the moment that made the Eren that we know today, the man who would go on to exterminate the world, forsake his friendships, his sanity, his life, as well as cement the death of his own mother, all for the sake of a freer world.
Jesus, I remember this taking so long, this bit.
But looking back, we now see this memory as the moment that made the Eren that we know today, the man who would go on to exterminate the world.
Yeah, this edit, like me putting up all the pages as I spoke them, I thought it was so cringe initially. Like I had so many different versions of doing this, but
his sanity, his
in
life,
the end,
as well as cement the death of his own mother, all for the sake of a freer world. Now with that in mind, it's time to examine one of the most famous panels of the manga.
The final recollection.
Chapter 131 is heartbreaking. We get a harsh juxtaposition of Eren profusely apologizing to Ramsay in the past, while eradicating Ramsay and his people in the present. This juxtaposition continues building up until we finally see Eren's precious memory for the final time. When we saw this memory for the first time in Chapter 4, Eren is reflecting Armin's excitement. The next time we see it in Chapter 73, Eren is in a state of
Oh my god. In Chapter 73, clearly I spliced that audio together and I thought it was very effective, but clearly it's not.
shock,
Oh
shaken
boy.
to his core. And now, in Chapter 131, we don't see Eren's face at all. And then we turn the page to see the first showing of the present Eren since the start of the rumbling in Chapter 122. Face turned away from view, staring into the clouds, panels of death and destruction above and below him. It's a great representation of him pushing away the death and destruction that is obscuring the view he has been dreaming of seeing since he was a child.
I mean, that's... Okay, so... It's kind of cringe, I guess, that line. I don't know. There's something about, like, when I'm describing something simple, like, that's a pretty simple, like, obvious thing that I'm pointing out, and it kind of, like, makes it seem very pretentious, and I don't know, I think I like to avoid doing that kind of stuff now, but...
And on the next page, we get the famous Freedom panel. We see Eren embodied as a child, arms wide open, facing and embracing the horizon.
Hey, I remember, I like the way I described the, this panel, I guess I was a fan of, and I think hopefully it'll still be
below,
good.
masking the horrifically blood-stained earth of his near-complete
Yeah, motive
Many interpret this
words.
panel as showing Eren's way of coping with the terrible acts he has committed. He is masking away the bad deeds below while staring into the horizon above an unbounded world, achieving the exact dream he had held so sacred in his precious childhood memory. But then we turn to a page that I find is surprisingly poignant and has a surprising amount of depth. We see Eren elevate his gaze. Now, this small action by Eren may not sound too crazy, and it's something that I imagine most of the audience doesn't even really care about, but it really struck a chord with me. What we're seeing in this singular panel at the crescendo of Eren's character arc is Eren once again staring into the clouds, just as he would do every day as a child.
So, I had this... How much detail should I guess I had this point... This was the point that, like, I based the whole video on. This, like, one panel of him looking up. And it was just so hard to tie it all together, to make it so it would be one coherent idea of, like, how all these things tie together, and this is actually not a moment of character progression, but character regression. I don't know if I tied it well. Hopefully it makes sense. So let's keep watching. Oh great, now it's not going to take... Wait.
Before his hatred of Titans, before the death of his mother, and before he even had a single shred of determination to seek freedom. He's right back where he started. His head is empty, without any care for the horrific things going on around him. He was born this way, and now he retreats to it. A brief moment of character regression right at the end of his character arc. He has finally achieved his vision of freedom, but is exactly back to the same mental place he was before he even realized that this desire for freedom was his desire at all. Now, I'm sure Eren doesn't realize this. It's more of a subtle detail for us, the audience. Perhaps it's meant to get us thinking. Why do any of what Eren has done at all, if it just led him straight back to where he started off?
So that's the weakest line in this video, where I had the point. I knew that Eren looking up is significant, and it's more significant than anyone else would have given credence to that panel. So I thought, by default, this is like a notable idea to kind of convey to others. But then tying it into something like there, wait, let me watch it again.
This is desire at all.
So I like that, his desire, whatever, it's all worded nicely.
Now I'm sure Eren doesn't realize this.
Now I'm sure Eren doesn't realize this. This is like me coping and trying to figure out a reason for, like, how I can get people to believe that this is important.
It's more of a subtle detail for us, the audience.
Yeah, more of a subtle detail for us, the audience. I don't know. Is it? Is it actually a subtle detail? I don't think so. I think it's just a interpretation you can make that Izayama probably didn't even care for. But
it's meant to get us thinking. Why do any of what Eren has done at all if it just led him straight back to where he started off before his journey even began? He then turns to Armin, who looks down on
And this whole rest of the video was like I finished it at that point and I was like, I feel like this isn't really a good ending point. So then I added this whole bit at the end, but
him.
I think it
bloodstained
ties
and in shock.
together.
This innocent, precious memory they share has been destroyed. It's been shattered, just like the fractals of paths right behind them shatter the dark night sky.
Oh, sorry, this bit after here.
So hopefully by now I've convinced you as to why this memory is so important, at least in my perspective on Eren's story. But the title of this video isn't Eren's most important memory, but rather Eren's most precious memory.
Look at that, genius, changing the colors of the words. I need to remember to do that. I actually like that quite a bit.
Chapter 139, the final chapter of Attack on Titan, opens with a conversation between Armin and Eren. Eren is finally opening up to Armin, explaining why he has done the things he's done. This conversation takes place chronologically right after Eren turns back to see the bloodstained Armin in chapter 1.
See, I thought that was a genius point. Because I'm like, oh, all these readers, they probably don't realize that this is chronologically after that. And I honestly, I probably didn't even realize until I made this video. Anyway.
But more importantly, this conversation takes place at the exact location of...
And this took a lot of effort and research and going to the anime and then finding that there's so many different versions of this scene in the manga and they all are drawn differently. So there's no consistency whatsoever. So then I had to go to the anime and that's why I've got like a comparison between the anime and the manga here. But I'm pretty confident it's meant to be the same location and exact same memory. Goddamn loading.
Of their shared memory. Not just some spot on the canal in Shiganshina, but the exact patch of grass where Armin first approaches Eren about the outside world. So why is this such a precious memory to Eren? Well, this is the place where he would come stare at the clouds as a kid, where he first noticed the glint in Armin's eyes, where he first considered venturing beyond the walls, and it's at this exact spot where his quest for freedom first began. And now, knowing that his death is likely fast approaching, he returns there with Armin, both appearing as children, reviving this memory one final time.
And then fade out. That was pretty good. The narration wasn't as bad as I remember. I remember it being very monotone, but I guess it's still engaging. I would give that... Yeah, I'd definitely give that an A tier. I thought it's a novel idea. It's executed fine, nothing too fancy, but it's easy to follow. I guess the wrap-up is kind of where it falls apart, where like I point out something that's interesting, but I don't really tie it into some strong like thematic thing or anything. But I think it's a solid video. It'll probably be the bottom of A tier by the time we get through it. But next up, so by this point we are watching season 4 part 2, and we watched the Ymir episode, and I'm like, there's some interesting things that got changed here, and this video got
The depths
produced.
of Ymir's heart are difficult for us to
Oh yeah, I also added a spoiler warning because the first video didn't have one, and then I felt bad because I didn't want to spoil anyone.
The depths of Ymir's heart are difficult.
Can I still remember these scripts? The depths of Ymir's heart are difficult for us to describe because we never receive any direct insights as to what her motivations are. Any interpretations of her motivations are merely observations made by other characters in the story. I think that's all I know.
Describe, as we never receive any direct insights as to what her motivations are. Any information about her motivations are merely interpretations made by other characters in the story. With the recent airing of Chapter 122's adaptation in the Attack on Titan anime, I thought
amazing, 9.9. I wonder if it still has that rating.
An
Probably
interesting
not.
interpretation of her character. It's not an interpretation that I'm very confident in, and I believe there are a few contradictions if you explore her much later actions more deeply, but it's something I found interesting, so here we go.
I also think this video is kind of overridden by my Mikasa video, which I think is much more, what do we even say? Much more cohesive in the story I try to paint. Yes, this is less cohesive, but I still think it's somewhat interesting if you focus just on the adaptation.
Episode 80 of Attack on Titan adapts Ymir's backstory from Chapter 122 of the manga.
First time using footage as well. I was a bit scared it was going to get claimed, but a year later it still hasn't been claimed.
For the most part, it's a very faithful adaptation of the manga content with a few minor additions to the story of Ymir's life. However, some of the ambiguity of the original chapter is replaced with more concrete interpretations. By seeing the guards push Ymir towards the slave getting his tongue cut off, we lose any ambiguity as to how far into her life her tongue was removed. By changing the location and adding guards near the kiss that Ymir sees, we're told that the kiss is by and to the king. By giving Ymir a voice when she's being chased down, we're told that she is just a normal person and afraid. And by showing Ymir only beginning to cry when seeing the flower that is framed right in front of her face, we're told that Ymir is crying due to what the flower means to her. Although most of these adaptation choices are insignificant and don't change how I view Ymir at all.
I like that. The text over the footage and then multiple different things. I did the same thing in the Hunter x Hunter video, and I think it works pretty well.
The king being involved in the kiss, and the anime clearly showing Ymir crying on seeing the flower, are significant reductions in ambiguity compared to the manga that I think warrant discussion. To explain how these particular adaptation choices inform my view of Ymir, we have to go back to another addition that is unique to the anime, and that's the bridging of the adjacent scenes of her village's destruction and what may be the first kiss that Ymir has ever truly internalized. The way the manga bridges these two contradicting atmospheres is by using a loose symmetry in panel size and location to frame both events as equally important yet starkly contradictory. This is impossible to translate directly directly into an anime format. So what we get instead is a stark juxtaposition of the rising embers of her burning village with the falling celebratory flower petals that permeate Ymir's field of view.
It truly is like a great adaptation choice. Maybe the best the adaptation choice they made in that season, because it's so important and it informs Ymir's character so well. And it's just like good to look at as well.
As she witnesses the kiss. These flower petals are nowhere to be seen in the manga, but are a neat addition that really emphasize the clearly contradicting atmospheres, while also giving Ymir an object to forever associate with the moment of the kiss. Now skipping forward to the final chapter of the manga, Eren states that when he touched Ymir, he felt that Ymir loved the king.
My goodness, did you see that? The text went up with the picture.
To forever associate with the moment of the kiss. Now skipping forward.
Look at this, ready?
The final chapter of the manga, Eren states that when he touched Ymir, he felt that Ymir loved the king. But my interpretation based on this episode is that Eren's statement is incomplete. On seeing the kiss involving the king, Ymir decided that she wanted to be loved. And in doing so, she chose to love the king, the first man who she internalized being kissed amongst an atmosphere of sheer joy and celebration, an atmosphere that starkly contradicted her recent life experience of the burning embers of her village.
Okay, so I think this is true. Like, I still stand by this video. And yeah, no, I still stand by it. And I see so many just people not understanding Ymir at all, where this is very, like, clearly, with no ambiguity and no doubt in my mind, that is what Ymir wants. She wants to be loved. And she does what she does because of that. It's just interesting. All right, resume.
In happiness amidst a life of pure misery, she emotionally latched on to the first moment of happiness she was able to properly process in her new life as a slave. She associates the act of love she was witnessing with the positive atmosphere and falling petals surrounding it. In essence, Eren interprets her feelings inaccurately. Ymir may have loved the king, but it's not as straightforward as Eren seems to describe. Whenever Ymir thinks of happiness, she thinks of freedom from her terrible enslavement. And when she thinks of her freedom, she thinks of the happy environment she witnessed on the day of the internalized kiss, which contradicted the pure misery of her village's destruction up to that point. And when she thinks of the happiness she witnessed that day, she feels a deep desire of wanting to experience the feeling of being loved, like the two involved in the couple, to her eyes, seemed to experience on that day. So on being set free by the king for letting the pig escape, one of her
That's another split audio thing for letting the pig escape.
eyes is removed.
I also felt bad because I uploaded this as a TikTok at one point, like this like 30 seconds surrounding this, and I forgot that that's the pig reveal is a spoiler of what comes later on. I didn't put a spoiler warning, so I felt kind of bad.
Moved and she's hunted down. Stumbling to the floor as she's hit by an arrow, she looks at the flower in front of her, reflects for a moment, and cries. Her spirit wasn't broken.
I hate the way, for some reason, it's not like it kind of sounds like I'm crying, right? Like, and cries. But that's not intentional, and it happens every time I mention crying in every video, because I've mentioned crying in a few different videos, and it always happens, and I always hate it. But I just can't, like, I always pick it up after the recording, so it's annoying. But here we are listening. Let's listen to it again.
It's on that day. So on being set free by the king for letting the pig escape, one of her eyes is removed and she's hunted down. Stumbling to the floor as she's hit by an arrow, she looks at the flower in front of her, reflects for a moment, and cries. Her spirit wasn't broken by the burning of her village or the cutting of her tongue. It wasn't broken by the removal of her eye, and it wasn't broken by the vicious contest to hunt her down. What ended up breaking her spirit in the end was the blatant contradiction between her hopes and dreams and her ever.
Oh, there we go. That edit took it took a lot of convincing myself to put that in here, because I edited it and I was like, oh, this is a somewhat interesting novel idea. It kind of makes the point of what's going on in her mind, but I was like, at the same time, I was like, oh, it's kind of cringe, a bit overdone.
Contradiction that she finally.
I think it works okay. It's fine.
When it's blatantly shoved in her face as she falls down in front of the flower, whose petals are stained in her own blood. Being confronted with her harsh reality, she accepts that she will never be.
I guess that's another thing I have a big contention with a lot of people. Like, they all take this as like a symbol of oh, it's the 9 flower petals, the 9 titans. I don't think there's any significance whatsoever. I think when she's looking at this flower, she is purely using it to see, like, what a terrible situation I'm in. This is what my life has got to. I've got nothing. Love has not been reciprocated, and it's just sad. Like, this is certainly what it is. And the fact that she, like, I don't know why I'm getting so argumentative about it, but, like, the fact that when she dies, it is what she thinks to. And it's made abundantly clear in the anime about that.
Being confronted with her harsh reality, she accepts that she will never be loved, and she breaks down crying. But after giving up on her dream, she doesn't die. She falls into the tree and is given the power to create anything she wants. She chooses to build a body that is larger, stronger, and undying. So
I think that's another problem I have. So here I'm saying, in the speech, I'm saying, like, larger, stronger, and undying. But here it says something stronger, something larger. She gave birth to an undying body. I think this is like an unofficial translation or something. And I think the official one is a bit more ambiguous. So I don't know.
That perhaps through being more useful, she can be loved.
Oh, and that line got added. I remember I recorded the whole thing. Wait, let's listen to that again.
The power to create anything she wants. She chooses to build a body that is larger, stronger, and undying.
Yeah, she chooses to build a body that is larger, stronger, and undying. And then I go to the next point, and it's kind of like, why did I bring that up at all? So then afterwards, I had to record this next line about
that perhaps through being more useful, she can be loved.
Yeah,
and
tying it in,
hope that her dream may come true at last, she returns to the king. But still, she doesn't feel loved. She gives birth to the king's children, but even then, she doesn't feel loved. She even gives up her own body to save the king's, and all she is left with is a hole in her heart. So she gives up on her dream for a second time. Last,
oh, I love that, the hole in her heart.
To the king, but still,
probably my best thing I've ever written in my life.
She doesn't feel loved. She gives birth to the king's children, but even then, she doesn't feel loved. She even gives up her own body to save the king's, and all she is left with is a hole in her heart. So
you get it? Because it's a literal hole in her heart, and it's like a metaphorical hole in her heart because the king doesn't care about it. Oh, genius.
She gives up on her dream for a second time, but again, she doesn't die. Instead, she wakes up in an eternal void and continues to serve the king, grasping desperately to the one image of happiness that's seared in her mind, as she lives a torturous experience for unquantifiable eons until the day she finally sees a person give up the love that she had been so desperately clinging onto. She can now pass on for a third, final time.
There's something about how I worded that I enjoy. Like, I enjoy writing like that, where it's like you're building and building and building and building and release at like a point. Where here I'm like, she's doing this and this for unquantifiable eons until blah blah blah, and that's like the conclusion. I kind of like that, like prose. I don't know if that's
the one image of happiness that's seared in her mind.
Like from here,
she lives a torturous experience for unquantifiable eons until the day she finally sees a person give up the love that she had been so desperately clinging onto. She can now pass on for a third, final time. So that's my interpretation of Ymir based on some adaptation choices made by the anime.
Oh, then I do a cowardly thing at the end here, and I say that I don't know like what the truth is and blah blah blah.
But I haven't really taken a step back and looked at all of Ymir's appearances in the manga, so I haven't really thought too much about how to reconcile this interpretation with them. But regardless, I thought this was a decently
That's what the Mikasa video is for.
Interesting interpretation, and I felt like I might as well share it. So I hope you enjoyed, and please let me know what you think about this video and Ymir more generally in the comments.
So you can probably notice that this one had a bit more of a conclusion than the last one, and I think that was because Kyle said, like in the first one, like, he was the only person I'd ever seen like talk about that video, and he's like, oh, it just wraps up suddenly, doesn't it? So I was like, oh, I'll add a conclusion to this one, and here we are with a conclusion. But yeah, that was 992 subs. Look at that. That was great. I thought that was really good. The only thing is the narrate. Actually, I kind of like this narration more than my current narration, where I put a bit more emotion into it. This is kind of bland, but it feels more analytical. I think this is another A tier. It's definitely better than the first one. Combines the anime and the manga, makes a much stronger point. Whereas the first Eren video was probably more of a personal point where I feel strongly about it, but I don't know if I could convince anyone. This one is undeniably the truth of what Ymir is and what she wants. So I thought it was interesting. But then again, it is superseded by my theories I propose in the Mikasa video. But we'll get to that. Next up, Mushoku Tensei's Epilogue. So what's the context of this? I think I recently finished reading Mushoku Tensei, and I was like, the epilogue is the greatest thing I've ever seen in my life. So I have to make a video on it. And I looked it up, and there were no videos really, like no theory crafting or analytical videos on it. There were some recaps and like talking about it, but so I thought, oh, I'd make one on it. And I think what's interesting is that this one, the Paul and Rudy argument, I think that was there's no think. This was going to be my first Mushoku Tensei video. Like, I had a thumbnail, and I'd scripted out part of it. I think the introduction to that video I'd scripted out, I think, like, basically while I was writing the Ymir video. And I don't know, for some reason it just got pushed back, and it came out a few weeks ago. But anyway, this is another Mushoku Tensei video. Let's do this. And this was the first video to get a lot of views. I was very surprised that Mushoku Tensei content was going to be where I get all my views. And also, geez, so many interruptions, but first video using music as well.
The final chapter of Mushoku Tensei is an epilogue taking place in the distant future, far removed from the events of Rudy's lifetime. We follow a new protagonist in a new environment who is facing...
I hate when I have to, like, I have a long speech like that, and I don't know what to show on the screen. So in this case, I just put just a picture of the web novel, but I always hate when that happens.
A new challenge. And as we begin the chapter, we have absolutely no idea how it relates to the main story of Mushoku Tensei. Is it a backstory for the man god? Is it somehow related to Orsted's time loop? We have no idea. But as the chapter goes on, we finally get what we've waited for 261 chapters. An explanation for Rudius' reincarnation, and a very satisfying one at that. The epilogue follows the playback blessed child, a girl whose life is a never-ending cycle, living the same life from birth to death with...
Oh, I was so adamant on the name Lilia. Like, I even... Because in the version of the web novel translation that I read, they write Riria, which it just annoyed me because I'm like, oh, I've never heard the name Riria. And when you look at the Japanese writing of it, it's Riria in terms of like the katakana. It's different to Lilia, as in the Riria, I think is how you say it for the actual maid Lilia. But I don't know. To me, Lilia is a better translation than Riria because it's just more of a common name. But I don't know. I went and I changed the wiki and added the katakana to it, and gave a justification. So if anyone wants to contest it, they can. But I was very adamant on this. That's why I put Lily here. Anyway. And we don't have a single picture of her, so I didn't know what to use here. Which also explains why I put Ymir in the thumbnail, because they're a very similar character.
With negligent differences between each of her lifetimes. Her life story exemplifies fate as described in the narrative. No matter how many times she lives, no matter what actions she takes, her life always follows the same general path.
And this was also before I realized that the light novel had images. So in my next video, I put a lot of images from the light novel, but in this one, it's basically just text.
And concludes with the same general ending. However, the girl also possesses a power that allows her to rewind an object's time. This makes the girl herself an object of great desire.
The music
for
works well
in her country, and in the end, she always suffers. Her suffering builds and builds until she finally declares, "No more, someone save me." And in her following lifetime, a boy is summoned from another world. But shortly thereafter, the boy dies, and the girl who had fallen in love with him challenges fate itself to bring him back. Through this act of defiance against her eternal hell, an eternally shut-in NEET slips between two worlds, unintentionally being given a second chance at life. This previously shut-in man, whose past trauma had caged him in eternal loneliness, is encouraged to, and slowly chooses to go out and embrace his new world. This gradual but grand change in his own personal philosophy is an act that would usually be minuscule in the context of the world at large, but the ripples—
Oof, I like that edit. The ripples of his interactions, you know, as the ripple of water comes in.
of his interactions end up causing the teleportation incident.
Oh, look at that. It's great. The ripples of the interactions literally turn into the teleportation.
In the context of the world at large, but the ripples of his interactions end up causing the teleportation incident, a symptom of a direct assault against the weakened laws of fate in the six-faced world, resulting in the rebirth of the playback-blessed child into a world where the future may no longer be set.
Oh, I remember when I was writing this as well. Just keep having a solid understanding of what was actually happening in this epilogue was not a challenge. It took a lot of work because the translation isn't perfect. So I had to go back and I tried to manually do some translations for things that were left a bit ambiguous. So I'd like take the Japanese words and try and figure out what they meant and everything. But I think I have everything I've put here, I'm fairly confident that I got the translation correct. Anyway.
In stone. This is a uniquely interesting epilogue, as there's two ways to interpret it. You can interpret the plot literally, that would render it more of a prologue that shows how the events of Mushoku Tensei were set up. But if you focus on the subtext, it's clear that this story was perfectly placed to give a neat wrap-up to the story of Rudius's life. First, let's start off by talking about the literal interpretation, and in particular, the lore. The epilogue is begging for us to place it in the context of what we know, though with the very limited knowledge we have of the particular future period in question, we are way out of our depth, which leads to a lot of interesting speculation and theory crafting. We hear of a war between countries, with the summoned boy Akito dying on the battlefield in the city of Roa.
I thought that was a very cool point, you know, where I'm like, oh, we actually see where he dies many seasons before we see him die.
In the Futor region. This is a small geographical clue that makes the kingdom a focus in the epilogue, most likely what we know in the present as the Azura kingdom. This opens up so many great questions for speculation. Who succeeds the throne in the lifetimes of the blessed child?
I hated the way I edited this. I did this out of necessity, not knowing what to put and being a bit lazy. It's just like the gray background and the white border. I thought this is what makes, like when I ranked it in the tier list, it'll be low because of this.
Is it Grabel, Ariel,
like it's so boring,
House, or someone else entirely? Perhaps it's all of them in different lifetimes, which leads to the three types of kings the blessed child observes. Why does the kingdom keep falling in the lifetime of the playback blessed child? Is it due to what Orsted said about the succession of First Prince Grabel, who leads to Azura's demise by focusing on weapon development? Or perhaps we're observing Azura amidst the Second Laplace War after his reincarnation. With the epilogue taking place in the early 500s, the timeline would almost perfectly line up. There's also the introduction of the Prodigy Magic Knight, being the architect of the summoning formation.
Gee, it's always so obvious when I've changed to a different recording session.
They feel reminiscent of Nanahoshi, though clearly that can't be the case as she's not yet been summoned and would be immediately recognized by Akito. So who is she? It's impossible.
Well, it turns out it's Aisha, apparently, according to the author, which is strange. I still don't buy it, but it is what it is. It is the canon.
As it seems based on the timeline, could she be Rudius's daughter Lara, who leaves her home in the final redundancy chapter, saying that she will return home with a boy in the distant future? Or could this just be an entirely new character, and instead, Lara is the person who creates the prophecy about the summoning of a hero?
I like that. I still stand by that.
She is the only person for a long time to have seriously studied divination at the University of Magic. These and so many other questions are fantastic seeds for thought that add a lot of intrigue to the epilogue. They make me want to keep rereading it to try and discover more subtle details that I missed, and they make the epilogue a great springboard for a potential sequel series.
What were these? So, is Lilia's power related to the actions of the first dragon god? Does the man god know about Lilia? Okay, yeah. Oops.
thought that, and instead, Lara is the person who creates the prophecy about the summoning of a hero, as she is the only person for a long time to have seriously studied divination.
That's very badly
At the
worded.
University of Magic. These and so many other questions are fantastic seeds for thought that add a lot of intrigue to the epilogue. They make me want to keep rereading it to try and discover more subtle details that I missed.
Oh, I just noticed I also left up the war between countries. I should have taken that out.
And they make the epilogue a great springboard for a potential sequel series. On the other hand, the epilogue also excels in subtext that thematically ties up Rudius's life. There was no grand plan in Rudius's reincarnation into this world, and without choosing to better himself, there would be no significant changes to the world at large. He would have continued to live his life in his secluded village, and everyone in the world would remain a slave to their fates. His choice to live a better life is completely his own, and as an unintended consequence, just like he wished he could have been free and taken hold of his own future in his previous life, he changes the lives of those around him by so much that he gives everyone in the world a chance to take hold of their own future stories as well. In a way, I see the epilogue as Mushoku Tensei.
That's great. I've always, like, ever since, like, this is what convinced me that I have to use music in every video, where, like, the crescendo of the music here, as you're seeing all the people who, like, all the characters that we're familiar with that have been influenced by Rudius, like, it really builds up, and I can feel the emotion behind the words, and without the music, it wouldn't be as effective. So this is evidence of, like, why I always use music now. But wait, let's hear that amazing bit again.
Village, and everyone in the world would remain a slave to their fates. His choice to live a better life is completely his own, and as an unintended consequence, just like he wished he could have been free and taken hold of his own future in his previous life, he changes the lives of those around him by so much that he gives everyone in the world a chance to take hold of their own future stories as well. In a way, I see the epilogue as Mushoku Tensei's way of condoning those who try to better themselves. Through a second chance, a supportive environment, and a personal choice to be a better person, there is no limit to the amount of positive change a person can bestow to the world. So those are my thoughts on the epilogue and how it does a great job at melding both interesting lore and meaningful subtext. Its
Another attempt to do a conclusion, you know? Anyway.
plot elements inspire tantalizing speculation and make the chapter a great springboard for a potential sequel series. While on the other hand, its subtext gives a cute little send-off for Rudius's character,
Deserving of the title of epilogue. Beautiful. I think the ideas are very good. Because I can imagine, I don't know much criticism of the epilogue, but I can imagine someone gets to the ending and they're like, huh, this is kind of out of nowhere. Like, why are we doing this? But it definitely is a nice wrap-up of Rudius' story. Where is it? Oh, it's the third one. This would be a B tier. I think the writing, like the actual like idea and stuff, I think that's an A tier, but the actual presentation is a B tier, I think. Oh boy, now the Arcane video. I haven't watched this since like a week after I uploaded it. I don't want to. Oh, okay, let's just get it over with. Firstly, what a great episode. Arcane episode 3.
The fanning flames and frozen souls filling the moment that defined the rest of Powder's life. Then one blink and it fades away into a distant memory, frozen in time, the archway framing it like a portrait on a wall in the endless empty landscape of a broken mind, spinning as though it were the moment her world was turned upside down, zooming out as she sinks into an endless hole, the memory passing through the deepest crevices of her mind. But that memory, which was only a moment ago so vividly seared in her heart, is beginning to blur, time masking away the details, forging it into a singular emotion, rather a sensation, a mere shade of fiery orange, and now any lingering trace of the memory vanishes forever, leaving behind an emptiness that permeates the rest of her life. The end of a person, the end of an act, the climax of an amalgamation of emotions, a masterful way of encapsulating the feelings and trajectory of a character into a single scene. This is far and away my favourite scene in all of Arcane, and one of my favourite scenes of all time.
I think it's passable. Like, it's fine until we get to the credits where I like talk about the something about a scene, the creation of a character, blah blah blah. I think that's a bit very cringe. And then at the end where I'm like, oh, my favourite scene of all time. I think that's really cringe. But I think the narration bit at the beginning, you know what, it's not as terrible as I thought. But essentially this video was just born out of me watching this scene. I think it was like the greatest scene I've ever seen. I had to do something about it. But that's that. What did the comments say? Great. A bunch. Yeah. All right. I also changed this thumbnail a bunch. I do that for a lot. A lot of these thumbnails have changed since I uploaded them. All the borders have gone. They always have borders around them. It's not, I don't think it's the worst video I've made for sure. That's undeniable, but I'd probably give it a C tier, honestly. If it was D tier, I would private it now, I reckon. Oh, great, I closed the tab. All right, toward the tree on that hill. So this, I think I want to make more types of videos like this, where it's just, you pick something really specific and you make a video on it. Like, there's, as far as I was aware when I made this, no one had even commented on chapter 139's title. So I thought, I'll just make a whole video about it. Like there's a lot of ways you can interpret it. I thought it was interesting. And this is the first time I started animating panels, and now going forward, I think I'll do it in every video just because I think it looks really good. But oh god, at the beginning of this, there's so many animated panels. I think I spent like maybe 50% of the time editing this video was in these first like 10 seconds where I show all the animated panels. But anyway. I, alongside almost every manga reader of Attack on Titan, have a lot to say about the final chapter. For me, it was easily the most anticipated chapter of the entire story, with the insurmountable task of wrapping up a narrative that I've been enthralled in and building up expectations for over many years. What I ended up getting was a chapter that was exceedingly open-ended and was nothing like what I expected, but as I continued to reread it, I went from liking it to loving it. In this video, I want to focus on one aspect of this chapter that I believe gets nowhere near enough attention, and that's the title, Chapter 139 of Attack on Titan, Toward the Tree on That Hill. So first, I want to preface this video by talking a little bit about my view on interpretations. Like all elements of an artwork, I believe there are countless interpretations of a chapter title's meaning. What may seem obvious to you can be completely foreign to someone else, because what we each take away from a story— I really had no idea what to show on the screen, so I just did this blurring weird thing— is personal, and based on the elements that we place emphasis on. Whether you think the title is a metaphorical thematic throughline for the entire story, a summary of the literal events that take place in the chapter, or an unequivocal confirmation of your multiverse time loop theory, your interpretation is perfectly valid. Me, you, and Isayama himself have our own takeaways from the story, and our own views of the meaning behind Chapter 139's title, but to me, none of them are more true than any other. But with that preface out of the way, when I think to the title, 3 interpretations jump out to me. So my first and perhaps most straightforward interpretation is that Chapter 139's title is— Actually, I kind of like the—
none of them are more true than any other. But with that preface out of the way, when I think to—
I like this. It kind of makes it look like I have a big coherent idea that I want to convey with this like blurred, like, oh, this, you'll see this later, it'll all be revealed in time. My master plan.
3 interpretations jump out to me. So my first and perhaps most straightforward interpretation is that Chapter 1—
Oh, ready? I'm going to zoom in on the L.
39's title is a literal description of how the events of the
way
chapter,
too long to do.
Mikasa and a child in the distant future, toward the tree on that hill. It draws our attention to the full circle we have traveled by the end of Eren's story, both starting and ending at the tree on that hill. From a meta perspective, this callback to the very beginning of the series gives a strong sense of finality, like the story has finally addressed everything that it intends to, while also triggering nostalgia to the very beginning of the story all those years ago. It's a really fitting title to wrap up— I took a long time to choose that music. I had to pick something that would give me the sense of nostalgia, you know, when they're saying nostalgia. Anyway. The story, but beyond that, there really isn't all that much to talk about when it comes to this interpretation.
True.
In Chapter 137, Armin explains to Zeke that happiness and meaning in life can be derived from small, personal, everyday experiences. He uses a memory where he was running toward the tree on that hill as an example of such joy and meaning. This speech by Armin sets up my first metaphorical interpretation of Chapter 139's title, that it's telling us that the alliances, and in particular Mikasa's action of stopping the rumbling, leads future generations towards a metaphorical tree on that hill, symbolizing a happier, more fulfilling life. To me, the clearest evidence for this is the transition between the end of the Battle of Heaven—
Huh. I just had a thought about the tree on the hill thing. How does it relate to Ymir? Because Mikasa and Ymir are obviously entwined. Anyway, I'll think about it.
And Paradis 3 years following it. The transition begins with 2 sorrowful embraces of the ones they wish they could have openly loved in Ymir and her children, and Mikasa and Eren. We then literally—
Do I still believe this? Yeah, not really.
Turn the page and see a paralleled embrace by Historia and her child. Initially, it seems like nothing has changed, time skip beginning with an ambiguously distant gaze by Historia's child. But then we get a beautifully juxtaposed reveal of pure joy as she sees the birthday cake for her 3rd birthday. To me, the 3 paralleled looks followed by the reveal of the drastically contrasting—
Oh, I guess I didn't, I think it was a comment, or maybe it was on Reddit or something, but someone said that this might be a boy, and I was like, oh, I guess it could be. It just never even crossed my mind.
Joy on her face are a big release in tension. Her innocent smile makes it feel as though some invisible veil that had been clouding the hearts of the future generation has been pulled off by Mikasa's sacrifice and Ymir's choice to move on. This simple contrast conveys that Historia's child is now one step closer toward the life filled with love that Ymir and Mikasa wish they could have had, and hence—
Thumbnail.
Toward the tree on that hill is talking about this metaphorical happiness that the future generations are now heading toward. In Chapter 139's epilogue, we see the tree on that hill as our constant as the—
What an epilogue. The best part of the story, love it.
World shifts around it. We pass a significant amount of time seeing the completion of one cycle for Paradis, witnessing its construction, destruction, and reclaiming by nature. We then end with a child with a striking resemblance to Mikasa, heading toward the tree on that hill, ending the entire story of Attack on Titan with a grand full-page panel mirroring the one of Ymir in Chapter 122, where Titans were first introduced to the world. This epilogue is very open-ended, but to me there are 2 prominent interpretations. You can read it as a hopeless message about the cycle of violence being eternal. After all—
You know what's like triggered my memory right now? I remember, I don't know why this stood out to me, but I remember when Kyle watched this for the first time, like reacted on stream, he said that it wasn't, hopeless or whatever. Like it wasn't a. Essentially, I framed it as negative, and I probably shouldn't have. And it really stuck with me. I'm like, oh, I guess I did just say that word out of nowhere.
You can read it as a hopeless message
Yeah,
about
hopeless message. It's not. It really isn't hopeless, is it?
the cycle of violence being eternal. After all the efforts made by the Alliance to build a better world, Paradis was still destroyed well after the founders of the Alliance had passed on. Regardless of what causes the destruction, whether it was the world's retaliation, a completely distant, unrelated war, or even a civil war within Paradis.
Yeah, do you see what I'm hinting here? The iceberg stone, you know. Anyway, and Glasses Boy, of course.
Paradis itself, the world changes, but people stay the same, always finding reasons to divide and demonize the other. Growing up in a world that appears so different to that of Ymir's, yet at its core contains the same prejudice and hatred, a child of Paradis heads back toward the tree on that hill, beginning the cycle of hatred once more. But that's quite the cynical interpretation. Pushed by a terrible environment reflecting the cruelty of her world, Ymir created the Titans and led the world down a path of hatred. Although the parallels are clear, with a child with shaded eyes being tailed by a dog toward a giant tree with power held within it, there's no sign that the child we see in the epilogue is in anything remotely similar to the headspace that Ymir was in. Though their expression is ambiguous just like Ymir's, they're not alone, having a faithful companion following them rather than chasing them
I kind of think that's cringe. I've never liked the line like where I've said faithful companion.
down. And also unlike Ymir, they're prepared for this journey, wearing hiking equipment and heading toward the tree on that hill via intention rather than accident. There's no guarantee that they will choose to or even accidentally fall into the tree.
Reusing the animated panel because I wanted to make the most use of it.
And even if they did, there's no guarantee that they will choose to do anything with the power they're given, and there's even the potential that they use it toward a positive end. The amount of influence the actions of the Alliance had on the choices made by this child are left open-ended. But this open-endedness is the entire point. The choice they make after this chapter ends will be a reflection of the world they were raised in. Hence this ambiguous epilogue sprouting two opposing interpretations informs my final interpretation of the meaning behind chapter 139's title, that humanity is heading toward the tree on that hill where they will be judged by the actions of a representative who was forged by the new world. Whether this will result in a new beginning for the cycle of violence, or a clear step away from it, is left up to the reader's interpretation of Attack on Titan as a whole. So let's
Yeah, I think that's the, like, of the three interpretations I said, that's definitely the one I think is the clearest. And I think it works. It's really cool about like the meta perspective of like there's going to be people who take it one way and people who take it the other way, and that will inform the meaning of the whole story as a whole.
Let's quickly recap these three interpretations of Toward the Tree on That Hill. It's a literal description of the ending points for the main story and epilogue, giving a strong sense of finality and nostalgia. It's a metaphorical description of Mikasa's and Ymir's actions leading future generations to live happier, more fulfilling lives, and it's hinting at humanity's eventual judgment for the actions that have taken place throughout the entire story of Attack on Titan, leaving the result of that judgment up to the reader. But I think there's a fourth interpretation that's just out of my reach, having only read through the story once, so I thought I may as well share some of my thoughts on this before I do a reread.
Yeah, the eventual reread, which we'll get to in like 3 years from now, I'm sure.
It all stems from some similarities in the motif of the tree on that hill throughout the story. We of course see it in chapter 1, with Eren waking up from a dream after falling asleep on the...
This took so long to get all these like every time this tree comes up, and also just trying to tie it in together with like what it means. I had so many theories, and like Eren, it's difficult. But eventually this is what we got in this video.
The tree on that hill. Then we go an entire 120 chapters until we see the memory again as the largest, most central memory shard in chapter 120. We then see it once more in chapter 130, where Eren is pondering which moment it was that led to his eventual rumbling. We then see a different memory.
I'm very much looking forward to see what the anime does with that scene. It's gonna say a lot about what they think, what their interpretation of the ending
The
is.
same tree in chapter 137, where Armin teaches Zeke about life's meaning. And we see it twice more in the final chapter. Once at the end of the main story, with Mikasa sitting at Eren's grave, longing to return to a happier time, but also choosing to be grateful for the happy time she experienced. And finally again in the epilogue, as Mikasa grows older, and we see the child...
I also am very like forceful on calling it the epilogue, because I know there's a lot of people out there who call it like the bonus pages or whatever, and I'm just trying to like zero in that this is an epilogue, this is an epilogue. The bonus pages are only relevant for the people who are reading like in that 1 month period before they came out. So I just I never give in and, you know, use those bonus pages term.
In the distant future. Beyond these direct appearances, we also get 4 tangentially related inclusions that slightly differ from the main motif in some way. We see young Reiner and Annie argue under a tree on a hill in chapter 96, following the death of Marcel. We get a notable tree, though not on a hill, in Ymir's backstory in chapter
Well, it's probably on a hill, honestly.
122. In chapter 131, we see Ramsay hiding his money under a tree on a hill, money which he hopes to eventually use to build a brighter future for him and his brother. And finally, we see the tree on that hill on the final volume cover, depicting almost all of...
I also think tree on a hill, like the concept is probably some, like, maybe a Japanese thing, because I know in Mushoku Tensei, like, a big part of Rudius's and Sylphie's childhood is spent, like, on that tree on that hill, and they make a big point of it in the light novel. It's probably some, like, some cultural thing that I don't have the context for.
Eren's contemporaries as children, all running toward it. In almost all occurrences, the characters under or heading toward the tree are children, and in essentially all occurrences are at an important moment in their life where they either have recently or will very...
See that looping music there? Wait, let's hear that again. I ran out of time, obviously.
Children, and in essentially all occurrences are at an important moment in their life where they either have recently or will very soon experience a cruelty in the world that will forever change their life. So one way of seeing this is that the tree is a symbol that bridges the ignorance of childhood to the cruelty of the world. But there's definitely something else going on here that I can't quite get a grasp on, and I'm hoping that it will
The ignorance of childhood to the cruelty of the world. I think I still stand by that.
come to me through
And I still agree that I think I need to reread to properly understand it.
a reread of the entire story. So that's everything from me about the final chapter's title. I'd love to hear what you think about all this, and perhaps even your thoughts on the fourth interpretation in the comments.
That was the first and last time I ever made an appeal to the comments, I think. Maybe in the Reflecting Every Anime Part 1 video.
Thanks for listening, and I'll see you in the next video.
It felt kind of disingenuous, you know, like people are gonna tell me stuff and I'm not, I'll read it and I'll think it's interesting, but I'm not gonna like comment on it in another video or anything. But that was great. I thought that was a great video. One of my it's better than the Ymir video. One of my favorite, like I talked about at the beginning, I just like how it's a very simple idea and I just explored it very thoroughly. Like I think me personally, have probably spent the most time out of anyone who has read Attack on Titan reflecting on what the title means. And I kind of like that. I think that's really cool. But if there's anyone out there if you've seen another video just on the title, I'd be really interested to watch it, see what other people think. But yeah, the editing is the best up to that point. I have another video on here we'll get to that is much better edited, but I thought the editing was great. Motion panels, it looked good. It was a decent length as well. It didn't get too boring throughout. Yeah, great video. The best one so far. We're definitely not going to watch the whole thing of this. But just to get a sense of it, we can watch the introduction and skip over some of the parts for anime part 1. So this video series concept where I'm like reflecting on every anime I've seen, this was the first script I ever started writing. Like this was way before the first like Eren video that I worked on. This was maybe 2 months before I started writing this, and I was like, oh, eventually I'll turn it into a video. But I'm so glad that I worked on the other videos before I got to this, because it was going to be a very different video. Like I probably would have had my camera or something pointing at me and I'd like read out some stuff, and I think the way I've made it presented it here is much better than it would have been. But yeah, this was my first ever script and I haven't changed much. So I think the introduction and the first 3 anime I'd written, and then I waited a few months and finally was like, oh, you know, it's probably time to revisit this, and then I wrote the rest of it. But you know what, let's listen to the introduction and then maybe one part.
In this series of videos, I'm going to talk about everything that comes to mind about
loud.
every anime that I've seen, in the order that I watch them. The idea comes from me wanting to share my opinions on things that I've watched, but also not wanting to make review videos, since I don't really have much.
True. I never want to make a review video, because every review video I ever see is always like, I find them pointless, because it's like, it basically comes down to, oh, I like this, and oh, I didn't like this, and it's like, why am I watching this?
To say,
Unless it's like someone that I know, and I'm like, oh, I'm interested in what they think, but just some random review video.
beyond saying, this is good because I like this, and
Yeah,
this isn't
true.
good because I didn't like this. So the goal of these videos is to just get all my thoughts out in one place without presenting it like a review or anything. I guess you could say that this video is more for me getting my head straight than a video worth sharing with others. But who knows, maybe someone out there is listening to my dull, monotone narration right now and will suffer with me through the many hours of content to come. So in terms of what to expect, I'm going to be talking about 10 anime in each video in the order that I watch them, with very light video editing. I'd love to just make one really long video talking about everything all at once, but then the script would never get finished. So here we are. So like many
That's very true. I would much prefer if this was just one big video that I could put out. Like maybe once a year I do it, where I've got, but honestly, it would take so long. Like it even takes so much effort. It even takes just so much effort writing out 10 videos. Like even in part 3, I think I only did 8 or 9 videos because it was already so long and took so much time.
My age, my intro to anime was in the early 2000s on Cartoon Network. I grew up watching Dragon Ball Z, Yu-Gi-Oh!, Beyblade, and anything else that happened to be on during the evening after school. Dragon Ball Z in particular was something I got really invested in and loved dearly as a kid. But at the time, I never really categorized these shows as anime per se. They were just shows that happened to be on Cartoon Network that I happened to enjoy a great deal. As I grew up, I drifted toward popular live-action shows like Doctor Who, Breaking Bad, Game of Thrones, and so on, and I never really sought out anime, nor really had any understanding of the differences to Western animated media. Like I imagine is the case with most people, just via mere osmosis with people throughout my school, as well as general exposure to social media and the internet, I slowly heard of the all-time popular animes like Death Note, Full Metal Alchemist, Attack on Titan, Cowboy Bebop, and so on. However, it wasn't until the massive social media presence of One Punch Man, as well as its topping of the IMDb Top 250 TV shows, that I finally watched my first anime since I was a kid.
I think the editing is fine. Like the quick, I think I set it so that every 10 seconds the panel will change, and it's basically just the panel in the foreground and then the blurred spinning panel in the background. I think it's fine. Like it's fun for all these series to kind of go and collect the best moments or best like screenshots that I could find, so that maybe if someone's actually paying attention to the video, they'll be like, oh, that's really interesting. Maybe I'll watch this anime because it looks pretty cool. Anyway. I think we got the gist of it. Another minute. Let's watch.
Since then, I've seen around 40 anime, most of which tend to be the pretty popular ones, though
I've still only seen around 40 anime.
delved into a few more obscure titles over the years. What's made anime so appealing to me, at least over live-action shows, is that the stories that can be told are not bound by practical constraints in the physical world, and are mainly limited by the imagination of the creators. So with this abnormally long introduction out of the way, let me talk about the first 10 anime that I watched. In terms of spoilers, I won't include any massive spoilers, but I guess we each have our own thresholds for what we consider spoilery, so keep watching at your own risk. One Punch Man follows...
Yeah, and that was another thing I tried to do, where before I talk, I'll put like a few seconds of the music to try and hook them in, you know?
A hero who has become powerful...
Anyway, we got the point. What is there? One Punch Man... Don't have too much to say. Death Note, Cowboy Bebop, Full Metal Alchemist. I think I tried to mention how it's not the best anime of all time. Attack on Titan. I can't believe this was in the first video. I had to write so much about that. Mob Psycho. I think I liked the Mob. Maybe we can listen to the Mob Psycho section. I thought that was like, I kind of like that. Go watch Mob Psycho if you haven't.
Mob Psycho 100 tells the story of Shigeo Kageyama, a young boy with a kind heart. Guided by a talented scammer, Shigeo makes friends and helps others be the best they can be.
Yeah, I like the music. The music was a good choice for this.
While learning to express his own bottled up emotions. Mob Psycho is beautiful. It tells a surprisingly touching story with great characters, comedy, and action. Its animation is the best of all of the anime I've seen. It constantly demonstrates creativity, a clear passion, and a strong creative vision. From a production point of view, it probably tops my list. Every episode is brilliantly directed with fantastic cinematography. The show
Look at that. Look how beautiful
is
it is.
Consistently stellar in its art, with outstanding and eclectic animation styles being used throughout each episode. Fight scenes are of course great, with really cool Sakuga.
Oh, Jesus, I watched it in 2017. What's that? 5 years ago, almost more.
That demonstrates Mob's power. The show even has one fight involving teleportation that is the best portrayal I've ever seen of how threatening a power it can be. I also have to mention the mid-episode eye catches, which are phenomenal. I don't remember if this was always the case, but definitely by season 2, they are always beautifully animated in a very different art style to the show, and tell really cute short stories that occasionally tie into the content of the episode. I'd love if more anime could do clever things with their eye catches like Mob Psycho does. Aside from all that, the story of Mob Psycho 100 is really compelling. It's a very character-focused show, somewhat like a slice of life with an overarching storyline. One is a great author. He mixes comedy, emotions, and expectation subversion perfectly. He's also created two characters that I cherish deeply in Mob and Reagan, two fantastic people who have helped shape each other into better versions of themselves. And of course I couldn't talk about Mob Psycho 100 without mentioning the Body Improvement Club, who perfectly personify the will to never give up and try your hardest. They are the ultimate friends who will never unfairly judge you and will always push you to be the best you can be. There is nothing negative I can say about Mob Psycho 100. Please watch this show. I loved watching it, I love rewatching it, and I look forward to watching season 3 in the future.
True, I'm still looking forward to watching season 3. But hopefully next week I will be able to. What is that? Your Name, Dragon Ball Super. My Hero Gamers. What was the outro like? Let's hear it.
Well done.
Oh, I guess that's another thing. Could I use them? What music did I use here?
It was an absolute mess, but somewhat...
Oh no, that's fine.
Surprised anyone is actually listening to these words that I'm writing right now. If for some reason you are, please put your favorite vegetable in the comments. But anyway, eventually I'll come out with future parts of this.
Alright, who did it? Miller, legend. Carrot. Thank you, Josh. Alright. You two are legends. Yeah, this was back at the point where I was like, who the hell is going to watch a 35-minute video that I make? And it turns out a lot of people. So yeah, it kind of changed my perspective, where I kind of assumed that there's going to be at least one person that will watch the entire of each of the videos that I make. So I try and make them consistently good. And try and call people out. I think it's fun to call someone out at the end here and be like, if you're actually listening, then, you know, let me know, and because I appreciate it. I think it's really cool. Anyway, that was that. We didn't really watch it, but, you know, we got the gist of it. It's either A or B. I think it's solid B tier, I think. Very straightforward. I love the concept. Like I'm very big on like reflecting. I think that was really cool. Execution's not the best, but it's fine. Not as good as the Mushoku Tensei one, but it's fine. Then I did an unscripted Doctor Who video, which I'm definitely not going to watch. But that was fun. It's really fun going through all the Doctor Who episodes that like it's fun just trying to remember what they are and everything. It was a decent video. How should I even rank this? I guess it's a B tier. It's better than the Arcane video. It's worse than the scripted one here, but it's fun to listen to. Even me just going back and watching my own unscripted video, this was a fun one to go back and be like, oh, what did I say about this episode? What did I get wrong about this one? So that's cool. Very long as well. That was the longest video I had ever recorded up to that point. And then other unscripted stuff came, and like the Attack on Titan reread. Anyway, so now time for my most viewed video of all time. Oh, now I'm gonna get recommendations on this browser. Okay, we're getting there. So this was my very first like hardcore light novel, like in-depth analysis. Because unfortunately there's hardly any out there for Mushoku Tensei. Which is maybe why this got so popular, because people were really interested in it. I wish there was more of it out there, but here we go. Actually, I think another thing I should say is that it was my longest video I made up to this point, 14 minutes versus the 9-minute ending of Attack on Titan one, and it took a long time to write. Because it's split into 3 sections, like the Sharon, Millis, and the Bioral Kingdom battle, and I was initially, like, I wanted to make one long video, but each of these took so long to do. At some point, I was like, I'm just going to make 3 videos out of this and make one for each one, but the thesis was too strong to, like, split them up. So eventually I worked through it, spent a few weeks just trying to get the script right, and here we are. Another spoiler warning. I wish I didn't have to put up spoiler warnings, but I don't want to ruin a series for anyone.
The final 3 arcs of Mushoku Tensei end abruptly and without much fanfare. The events in Sharon Kingdom end with...
I wonder if I can remember this one. End with Pax's sudden suicide. The events in Millis end with a straightforward negotiation session, and the battle in the Bioral Kingdom, the largest scale battle in all Mushoku Tensei, ends within minutes of Orsted's
with Pax's sudden suicide. The events in Millis are resolved with a straightforward negotiation session, and the battle in the Bioral Kingdom, the final large-scale battle in the story of Mushoku Tensei, ends within minutes of Orsted's intervention, and beyond a simple description, we never even see the final fight itself. But these seemingly anticlimactic endings, the storylines that were each appearing to build toward their own grand climax, feel perfectly satisfying. And in fact, the end...
Yeah, I guess that's where this was built from. Like, I read through the first time. By the time I got to I noticed when I read volume 19, okay, anticlimax, that's cool. Then I got to the end of volume 21 or 22, whatever the end of the Millis arc is, and I was like, oh, that's another anticlimax. And at that point, I was like, okay, there's a trend. And initially, the video was just going to be about these two. And then I thought, oh, I guess I should tie it up to make it the third one as well. And then I thought, how does the third one tie in with an anticlimax? And I thought, yeah, it does with the Orsted stuff. And it all ties in together. And I think I even left a comment. I wanted to talk about to Rudy's, like the ride at the end with him and the man god. That's also a kind of anticlimax with what happens there. But that's for another video that I'll make eventually. Anyway, let's speed through this. I've actually rewatched this one quite a bit.
Endings to these arcs are some of my favorite parts of the entire story of Mushoku Tensei, and it all comes down to the characters.
It's also so annoying because there's different numbers in the web novel and the light novel.
Throughout Volume 19, we see a distant and different Zainoba from the man we've come to know quite well since his introduction back in Volume 6. After receiving a summons from his brother Pax, the new king of Sharon, Zainoba insists on returning to his homeland.
See, I think that was the best that I've ever integrated 2 audio sessions, because that was 2 different mics there, but
Volume
you probably
19,
can't tell.
We see a distant and different Zainoba.
Oh, no, same mic, I guess, 2 different sessions.
From the man we've come to know quite well since his introduction back in Volume 6. After receiving a summons from his brother Pax, the new king of Sharon, Zainoba insists on returning to his homeland, uncharacteristically pushing back against Rudy's pleas for him to stay. For some unknown reason, he is wholeheartedly dedicated to being by the side of his brother, who, amidst the coup, murdered the rest of his family. When asked why he is so steadfast on returning to Sharon, he explains his strong sense of patriotic duty to the kingdom that allowed him to keep on living after he murdered his newborn brother, and later on his wife. But on being pushed further to explain why he suddenly feels so strongly about this, he has no answer, and throughout the rest of the volume, it remains this way. And we, alongside Rudius, never really understand what's going on in Zainoba's mind. On arriving in Sharon, our characters are sent to a large-scale warfront at Fort Karen, the setting for, undoubtedly, the largest-scale battle we have witnessed in the story so far. On winning the battle, we're informed of an unexpected siege by the warlord Jade on the Imperial Castle, and on their arrival, our characters are forced into a battle with the Death God himself. But the battle...
Actually, if anyone is listening to this and you're big into Mushoku Tensei analysis, are there any straight like thesis-based analysis videos out there on the light novel? Because I would love to hear them, but I don't think I've seen any that have a thesis like, oh, I'm going to convince the audience that this is what's happening, you know?
And the flow of the volume is soon cut short. Without having reached a typical climax and still feeling as though there is plenty of story yet to come, Pax jumps off the balcony and dies. What follows is an unexpectedly candid chapter from Zenoba's perspective, the first glimpse into his thoughts and feelings over the past 15 volumes.
I think the music works very well here.
We see how Zenoba has slowly been influenced by the people around him. Through raising Julie, he learned that not all humans are hindrances, and in fact they can be really pleasant to have around. Through having a friend in Rudius who has never once abandoned him, he learned to appreciate that the ginger he had always found so bothersome had actually been that same way to him his whole life.
I realized afterwards how he's holding up the thing in the same position. If I'd realized that before the editing, I would have made a point of it.
By helping out Nanahoshi in her goal of returning home, he slowly began longing for his own homeland without understanding why. And it was only after lifting Pax's corpse that he finally realized that this longing for home,
the piano coming in there works very well. I think I timed that from memory.
Stemmed from his growing desire to connect with his family. A family he is only now able to truly value because of his newfound appreciation for human connection in life. After reading it, it's clear that the volume was never about building up the audience's thirst for action paid off with some epic battle against an apostle of the man god. Instead, it was about building up the question of what is going through Zenoba's mind, using the audience's frustration in Zenoba's inability to articulate an answer as a way to make the revelation of his point of view as satisfying of a climax as it is. If you take a step back and think about the overall flow of the volume's plot, it's quite the anticlimactic end to an uprising arc within a kingdom in the midst of turmoil. But at the same time, this anticlimax gives birth to an unbelievably satisfying climax for a volume focusing on Zenoba.
Yep, that was great. I don't think I have any negative thing to say about that.
After receiving a letter from Zenith's mother, Claire Latria, requesting that they bring Zenith to Millis at once, Rudius obliges and takes Aisha and Zenith on a family trip to Millis. There he is met with rage-inducing hostility from Claire, is attacked by the Temple Knights who sentence him to getting his hands cut off in an infuriatingly unfair trial for a crime which he didn't commit, and for his own safety is forced to kidnap the blessed child, who is at the center of a deep web that...
I'm very adamant on calling the character the blessed child and not Miko, but I could be very wrong on that, because I know in the anime and in the light novel translations they call blessed children or cursed children, but I'm not sure if her name is actually Miko or if it is the blessed child. Like, she doesn't have a name, I don't know, but so I just stick with the blessed child anyway. Look at this art as well, it's so beautiful.
That is the power struggles within.
Like, look at the lighting on the middle Rudius. Anyway,
he's then led to a hostage negotiation over the blessed child with the presence of leaders of various factions within Millis. Tension is high at the beginning of the session. Only a few scenes ago, Rudius was forced to fight the entire Anastasia keep over incorrect information that he wished...
Anastasia. I had so many ways of pronouncing that. I was like, is Anastasia, Anastasia,
to kidnap the blessed child. But here we are. Rudius has kidnapped the blessed child and is in a room full of very dangerous and powerful people, with knights surrounding him. We also know that in a different future, Cliff died in a comparatively simpler struggle concerning a god-tier incantation, so who knows what could stem from kidnapping the blessed child herself. Throughout the negotiation session, it feels as though things could erupt.
I've repeated the same image a few times. I didn't have much to go with.
Have they backed him into a trap? Are they stalling for time to capture Aisha? Rudius is on edge, but nothing ever comes of it. Rudius clarifies that he meant no harm to the blessed child, and that all he wants is to get his mother back, and it all just works itself out. Rudius is absolved, Zenith is freed, and Claire is sentenced to 10 years of imprisonment for kidnapping Zenith and inciting the kidnapping of the blessed child. And thus
I always wonder, because I like, obviously then I noticed that the music changed. Like, I had to intentionally fade it out and fade in the new song, but I always wonder if it's only obvious to me because I made the video. Like, do other people notice how terrible that is as well? I don't know.
Have another volume that ends anticlimactically. But then, unexpectedly, Zenith stands up for Claire, and then so does Cliff, and then even the blessed child stands up for her. So considering the feelings of these people, Rudius concedes to forgive Claire if she gives an apology. But all he is met with is a snort. Throughout the scene, we keep getting the message of, you should forgive her, shoved in our face. And personally, I was quite sick of it. Rudius, and us by extension, gave her plenty of chances to apologize. But not only is she not remorseful, but she pridefully defends her actions, implying that if she could wind back time, then she would do it all again. So Rudius gives up. I have no intention of reconciling with someone who never tried to get along with me from the very beginning. So let's take a
yeah, I think this video has a good balance of like visuals and quotes.
Brief step back. Why exactly do we hate Claire?
Oh, look at this great edit, cutting it out into a rhombus.
And what has she done to break someone like Rudius Greyrat? Someone who truly empathizes with the struggles of unpleasant people. It all stems from their first meeting. Sure, she treats Rudius rudely, she snaps at Aisha, and she demands that Norn be arranged to marry someone of her choosing. But Rudius...
This section was tough, because I knew people are going to hate Claire, and honestly, I'm very surprised there wasn't much more hate about, like, of her in the comments. But I had to kind of do a steel man here of, like, the position of, like, why even I hated Claire initially, so that I can kind of justify it, so that hopefully it'll get people's, like, they'll kind of listen to my argument more if I can at least steel man their position.
Is able to rationalize all of this. She's an upper-class woman raised in the religious capital of the world who has never met Rudius, has an unfair but understandable bias against Aisha, and thinks little of Norn's future potential. All of the nasty things she has said and done can be explained away with this in Rudius's mind. But then she targets Zenith. She refers to her own disabled daughter as a thing, Rudius's loving mother who, by no fault of her own, has lost all lucidity and autonomy after the teleportation incident. Claire implies that she only cares about maintaining the standing of the family name by stating that she will force Zenith into as many successive marriages to nobility as are required. She disgustingly states that Zenith's healthy body is a blessing in disguise, implying that she will force Zenith to bear more children. She is willing to take advantage of someone helpless who isn't aware of it and can't consent to it.
Yeah, man, that's a great image for this.
And not just anyone, but Rudius's kind-hearted, loving, selfless mother, who loved Rudius unconditionally and cheered so happily and purely when she first...
I wish I that one word loved. I wish I put love instead of loved, because obviously she does love him, and it's
saw him perform magic. The same Zenith who is now unable to do anything on her own, relying on the good nature of her family to help her get through life. This makes Claire a terrible, despicable, and unforgivable person in Rudius's eyes. But right as she is about to face her well-deserved 10-year imprisonment, we get the real climax of the volume, that is a chapter that reveals Claire's perspective. Claire isn't a bad person. She's vain, extremely stubborn, and strict.
I liked how I intentionally left this text up for so long because people need to read this. This is the thesis here.
But she is not a bad person. In her heart and mind, she realizes when she makes mistakes and is in the wrong, but her vanity and stubbornness doesn't let her admit it. From her perspective, the meeting with Rudius went poorly. On slowly realizing how well-mannered and soundly reasoned Rudius was, in the face of her sarcastic and harsh words, she regretted how hostile she was being. During the meeting, she completely changed her outlook on Rudius, but because of the image she has of herself, she couldn't admit it or apologize. And beyond this, she was faced with an impossible scenario. Through extensive research, she had found that the only existing example of someone who was cured from a condition akin to Zenith's was a woman who slept with countless men. She knew that forcing this onto Zenith would lead to rumors and likely ruin the person who was found responsible for placing Zenith into such a situation. So she spouted terribly disgusting things about Zenith to intentionally anger Rudius, so that only she would have to take the fall for the terrible things that she would have to do, which to her mind were in Zenith's best interest. So she then kidnaps Zenith, but on seeing the face of her daughter up close, her daughter, who she notices is already starting to grow old, she immediately realizes that her plan was wrong, and that there's absolutely no way that she could follow through with it. But knowing deep in her heart that Zenith would want to be cured, she is faced with paralyzing indecision. And thus the chapter ends with us having a much greater understanding of the person that is Claire Latria. The point of this
another thing, I wish I pronounced it Latria instead of Latria, like I do in this video. Anyway,
this chapter wasn't to justify or excuse the nasty and cruel things Claire said and did, but rather to humanize someone we had perceived as a monster. It's the perfect climax for a volume that explores the importance of understanding the perspective of others.
That was also a point that I think is pretty unique. I don't think I've seen anyone talk about that. And I was glad to kind of piece it all together in this, where it's understanding is the whole point of all this Miller stuff, even the idea of bringing in religion, and it just all ties back to understanding, and it does climax with this, with Claire as well. It's perfect. These are some of the best volumes in Mushoku Tensei. It all ties in well, together so well.
Race faction, Rudius's one-sided trial, even the blessed child's ability to see your memories, and finally, Claire's point of view chapter. The theme of understanding permeates the entire volume, and Claire's chapter is the climax of all of this, showing us that you should attempt to understand the perspective of even those who you consider to be monsters. The fact that we ourselves were only a few pages ago cheering for the righteous justice being bestowed onto this cruel person makes the message of the chapter strike us even harder. Being open to understanding the perspective of others is important, as the actions one takes are not always reflective of the intentions behind them. And so,
yeah, I was just going to comment on how I have the text coming up when you talk, and I think in this case it works well because it is me just trying to point out the thesis and make it very clear.
Claire burst into tears. She cried while making sobbing noises, cried while making a voice that seemed to say both I'm sorry and thank you. Zenith gently stroked Claire's face, and thus the curtain drew on the case in Millis. And with that, Mushoku Tensei has done it again. Another character revelation that becomes the climax of its volume. A volume that was seemingly building toward a more traditional, action-oriented climax, which was undermined in an incredibly satisfying manner. The battle in the Byaral Kingdom was an absolute
So I guess just reflecting on that Claire bit, I thought that was very good. Maybe one of the best points I've made across any video, except for one. We'll get to that video. It's great. What a great video that one is. But yeah, novel, passionate, because I feel very strongly about it. Decently well executed in presentation. Anyway, so let's keep going.
Marathon of a battle, and has already filled up Light Novel 25, and will likely end up spanning the entirety of Light Novel 26.
Well, I don't think he did end up spanning the entirety of Light Novel 26, but anyway.
As well. The battle clashes Rudius, Ruger, Sword King Eris, Sword King Ghislaine, Silent Fitz.
See that silent S or whatever when I was going to Ghislaine? It's because there was no gap, and I needed to make a gap when I was saying the words. There's terrible post-editing there.
As well. The battle clashes Rudius.
Yeah, listen to when I go Eris and then Ghislaine. It's terrible.
Ruger, Sword King Eris, Sword King Ghislaine.
So yeah, softens the end of Eris. I hate it.
Silent Fitz, North Emperor Doga, Immortal Demon King Aetoph, Water King Isolta, North God Kalman II, and many more. Against former Sword God Galfarian, Ogre God Malta, North God Kalman III, Immortal Fighting God Batagadi, as well as Geese.
I think this captures the, like, I think it does a good, I do a good job here of capturing like the scale of the battle, I guess, by having all these people here. And also, if you're like a anime only watching this for some reason, I think it's really cool to like see where, like, how many characters are involved in this. Like all these people, you don't know any of these people. Like, you know Sylvie, but you don't know it's Sylvie at this point. I guess you know Eris as well. But yeah, it's just like, it's so cool to see anyway.
Battle rages with a constant escalation in difficulty, with the participants slowly dropping out one by one due to death or fatigue, until only one person from each side remains. Rudius Greyrat, tired and with almost completely exhausted manner, and immortal North God Kalman III, Alexander Ryback, wearing the fighting god armor and wielding the dragon
All those titles, what a great man.
King's sword. But just as Alexander is about to initiate an attack that would almost certainly end in Rudius' swift death, a chill runs down the spines of these two remaining warriors as Dragon God Orsted appears. What happens next is an anticlimactic end to a battle that had been building for chapters on end.
Ooh, the music works
Alexander,
well.
and swiftly, easily, and completely one-sidedly defeats him. We hardly even get any details of the fight. In a single line, we hear that the battle has begun, and
because in volume 26 they have this new visual of this fight, like the end of it with Alex's arms cut off and everything. I thought, I wish I could have inserted it here. I even animated it. If you haven't seen it, check out my Twitter. I have a great animation of it.
Then immediately transition to a scene describing the aftermath. But this anticlimactic resolution is once again perfectly satisfying, all because of one fantastic revelation that becomes the climax of the battle, that Orsted chooses to enter the battle for the sake of his friends. By nature of his time loop and single-minded focus on his life's goal of defeating the man-god, Orsted's sole companion was solitude itself. But then he met Rudius Greyrat, a man who kept surprising him in a life Orsted had lived hundreds of times already. And much to both Rudius's and our surprise, Orsted began to respect him as a comrade and a friend. It's another fantastic example in a long list of people whose lives have been touched greatly.
So I used this visual in the first Mushoku Tensei video where I have all the characters popping up, and in the bottom I had Linear and Persona, but I always thought that looked terrible when I made that first video, so I was like, you know what? Perfect opportunity to replace that terrible picture with a great Orsted picture.
By Rudius, giving meaning to his otherwise meaningless reincarnation. And so, we get the climax of the final battle in all of Mushoku Tensei, the once lonely dragon god putting aside his one mission that he has dedicated his life to for the past 20,000 years, and doing so with a smile on his face.
This is an edited picture of Orsted, because there are no pictures of him, at least up to volume 25, of him smiling, so I went into Photoshop, did a slight smile on his face.
For the sake of his companions. The final character revelation that becomes the climax. And there we have it, the final
And another conclusion that I'm so obsessed with now.
3 story arcs in Mushoku Tensei end with a character revelation as their climax. The events in Shiroin reveal Zenoba's journey toward an appreciation for human connection in life. The events in Millis reveal the human behind what we had perceived as the monster that is Claire Latria, and the events in the Baiero Kingdom reveal the sense of camaraderie and companionship that had been brewing within Orsted thanks to Rudius' presence in his life. These character-based climactic endings to volumes that superficially have their plot end anticlimactically are fantastic and are just one of many examples of what make Mushoku Tensei's web and light novels so unique and interesting.
True. That's a great video. I can see why it's got so many views now that I look back on it. I don't really have too much to say. Well made. I worked with the limitations of only having images and nothing else. I guess if I was to remake this, I'd probably animate some of the images. That would be a very a good contribution to the like fandom, I guess, because there aren't like too many things like that. It would have been cool. But a lot of comments. I was really glad. Like, there's a lot of really long comments, which I enjoy reading. Where are they? Jesus, like, so, like, look at this. There's so many. It's so great. Anyway, that's that. Now, so let me think relatively. There's a lot of videos here. I think this is it's easily the top of A tier. Would I put it as an S tier? I don't think so. There's a few videos here that are still to come that I think are S tier. This would be a solid A tier, I think. All right, and then we got every anime part 2. We'll quickly have a look at part of it just to see there is difference like between these two. So this one, I think I spoke a bit more emotively. I put the music a bit louder, and I was a bit more I think I fine-tuned the things I wanted to talk about a bit, so it sounds a bit better.
So this video is part 2 in an ongoing series of videos where I talk about...
So yeah, the narration, see, it's pretty, I don't know, it's pretty... This is a good balance, I think, of emotion, but also being somewhat monotone.
...that comes to mind about every anime that I've seen, in the order that I watch them. For the most part, I won't include any massive spoilers, and if I want to talk about any specific...
Yeah, okay, so Dragon Ball GT. When you look at the engagement graph for this, like, you see people watch the intro and then dip straight away for Dragon Ball GT, and then watch, like, the rest of it. Which I guess makes sense. I struggled with what music to use for GT. Like, if we go to the GT section, listen to how terrible this music choice is.
Dragon Ball GT is an anime original direct sequel to Dragon Ball Z, picking up with Goku and Ymir.
Yeah, anyway. So GT, Samurai Champloo, Steins Gate, Hunter x Hunter. So in this Hunter x Hunter video, when I'm talking about the Chimera Ant arc, I go on this like rant, hopefully I can find it, where I'm like, music, directing, acting, characters, moments, blah blah blah. It's the best I've ever seen. That was actually taken from my my other, like, for instance, I have another Hunter x Hunter video here, right? The Dragon Dive. I wrote the Dragon Dive video way before I made this reflecting video, but it just came out much later because I didn't have a way, like a cohesive way of framing it. Like I didn't have this whole 2-minute idea yet, so it was going to be a bigger thing. But I took it straight from there, put it in this video because I was like, oh, it's probably going to be more impactful in this context. But yeah, let's listen to it. Where is it?
And I love it. Now, the second and final thing I have to talk about is the Chimera Ant arc.
Yeah,
It's my favorite story arc of all time. Whether anime, live-action TV shows, movies, you name it, and to this day, the Chimera Ant arc tops the list. It has
So I think it's, yeah, whatever's coming up here, this is taken from another video.
everything I love about storytelling. It has characters and relationships being pushed to their limits, really interesting character interactions, fist-pumping successes, and heart-wrenching failures. The fights are incredibly slow-paced and focus on characters and ideologies rather than choreography. We meet so many interesting characters and face a few subversive interactions. From a production standpoint, art, animation, directing, voice acting, music, you name it, and the Chimera Ant arc nails it. It's thought-provoking, tear-jerking, and thoroughly engaging. And that's all without even mentioning the key antagonist, who is a really interesting, subversive character.
Yeah, so all that, and you can see how it ends with the and engaging or whatever, and that was like the whole thesis for my like Dragon Dive, the most engaging scene in Hunter x Hunter. But anyway, Hunter x Hunter, Code Geass, Steins Gate Zero. Oh, it was so great rewatching bits of Steins Gate Zero for this. Like that deserves the 10 out of 10 I give it. Listen to this music.
In an alternate timeline following
So great. Altair.
time, we've had this scene play out so
Anyway, the Ancient Magus' Bride, The Promised Neverland, Reincarnated as a Slime, and Bunny Girl Senpai, where the music got claimed, so here I am using a Flife soundtrack.
entire school of students, and if you've seen the anime, you know exactly the really touching scene I'm talking.
Anyway, so I think this was better than the first one, but still same tier of stuff. I don't think it'll ever go up much. Oh, then we got the Vinland Saga unscripted read-through with Bacon. This was fun. This was a lot of fun. I loved reading this every week. It was the highlight of my week, recording the thing with Bacon. Vinland Saga is awesome. Let's quickly have a look at the videos, I guess, like the thumbnails and stuff. Hey, why do I come up there? Interesting. Yeah, so it was always fun design. Like, obviously the talk itself was the highlight, but I loved designing the thumbnails, especially this love one. Like, I put a lot of like thought into like, oh, what is love? Adam and Eve, you know, all these things. Sven one, the farmland, all of these are great. What's my favorite? I think I like this last one. Just taking out that panel of Nisquajaja. Yeah, these were great. You know, it was also fun like picking a panel to animate. What have I done? So I think this was Healed Padding Thorfinn. So this is great. Oh, I think this might be my favorite one I animated. Let's have a look.
We're just
Oh, yeah,
looking
sorry.
through a Western lens.
Oh, I don't want to hear my unscripted voice. It's not that good, honestly. But there were a few. It was really fun. That was the worst one here, the animating. Knut, Asklad, or Asklad. Anyway, this is solid. Like, I would give this an S tier, but it is unscripted. I'm more of a fan of the scripted stuff, but I would say this is top of A tier. Fantastic content. It took a lot of time. Probably took more time, honestly, than some of the scripted videos I've made, because I would make so many notes and try and like synthesize them into a solid, like, coherent thing. I'm also kind of glad this was the first unscripted series I did, because it kind of gave me a good foundation of like how to structure everything going forward. And I got a lot of feedback from people as well. This was a fantastic series. I loved making it. Go check out Jarky Bacon. He just a few weeks ago released an awesome Vinland Saga quiz video. And he makes a bunch of other awesome videos. But next up, Dragon Dive in 2 minutes. So I actually, when I was like looking up the timeline for when I made all these, I was initially planning, I think, to publish this video on like January 15th of this year. That's how early it's been in development, because I love this scene so much and I wanted to say something about it. But I told you in that every anime I've seen video, I had so much, like I just wanted to just praise it so much, and I didn't know how to frame it in the video. And then I came up with this genius idea in June where I'm like, oh, I'll frame it in 2 minutes and it'll be a challenge and I can try and make it small and the editing will be quick and all that. And I think it came together pretty well. The timing, you can see it's 1 minute 59 because if you upload something as 2 minutes, the thumbnail time, like the one here, actually gets rounded up by 1 second depending on the number of frames you have. So I had to upload this twice, which was a bit of a hassle, but here we go. Let's just listen to it. Oh, it's muted.
I found Hunter x Hunter's Dragon Dive to be the most engaging sequence in the entire anime, so now give me 2 minutes to explain why. Well, to start, it marked the beginning of the palace invasion that I'd been looking forward to due to 35 episodes of build-up. This build-up...
That took a while to figure out what the best way to make this text appear, but anyway, I think it turns out okay.
Included both emotional and existential stakes being set by the abandonment of Kite and the insurmountable power and ambition demonstrated by the king and his royal guards. We also met and learned the motivations of many new characters filling the roles of both friend and foe. These high stakes, plentiful character setups, and just the sheer number of episodes.
I think this was also my first pure anime video where I'm just using anime footage, so it was interesting to collect it all and slice it all together, and I don't know,
focused on the goal of invading the palace, made the beginning of this invasion and the dragon dive accompanying it an event that sucked me in and demanded my attention. When the episode began, sure, this build-up made me pay attention, but what continued to keep me engaged was a sense of intrigue due to the disruption of the usual flow of the narrative through—
Oh, did you see that? I put way too much effort into this. You probably didn't even notice. Let's watch it one more time.
Due to the disruption of the usual—
Alright, let's go frame by frame. Ready? So we got the backdrop here, and then see that transition. You probably can't see my hand pointing at it, but the background here, boom, cropped out again. I had to do it for all these frames as we're going, and then it fades out and transitions into the other scene. That's completely me, you know? The anime didn't do any of that. I had to do
engaged
that.
Was a sense of
manual rotoscoping.
Intrigue due to the disruption of the usual flow of the narrative through an unexpected perspective shift. The sequence shifts from our protagonist preparing to battle the Royal Guard to now following the Royal Guard as they face an adversary unknown to even the viewer. I may have had my suspicions, but I was essentially placed in the same boat as the antagonists, uncertain and thoroughly engaged as I tried to work out what it was that was fast approaching. So after earning my attention through a massive build-up and intriguing me via an unexpected perspective shift, the sequence maintained my engagement by using time dilation and unusually ever-present narration.
I kind of like the editing style here, where it's the frame itself is already small, and I'm just kind of making it smaller with this black text.
These two elements ensure that every action that is taken in this sequence is thoroughly observed and thoroughly understood by the viewer. The emphasizing of such minutiae created a sense of monumentality, as though every action that took place was a linchpin for the fate of the world. This sense of monumentality had me glued to my screen, and the fact that it looked so cool certainly helped as well. Hence, this build-up, perspective shift, time dilation, and narration work together to create a sequence that...
It was so hard to... I can visualize the build-up is easy to visualize, perspective shift, time dilation, but the narration, how do I show that as an image? So I was like, oh, you know what, I'll just put the subtitles on when I actually show the footage. Genius, right?
Held my attention and had me on the edge of my seat, wondering what would happen next. In other words, these elements made the Dragon Dive the most engaging sequence in Hunter x Hunter.
In Hunter x Hunter, and then cut off. Because I had to fit that 1 minute 59, alright? I initially had half a second to make it more natural, but I had to cut it out. So I thought this was good. Now, I thought this would get a lot more views, because I'm like, oh, it's an anime video, my first anime one. It's about a scene and a show that everyone loves, maybe people find it interesting. So I think this is the biggest one where I have a discrepancy between what I thought it would get and how it ended up. And that kind of it's hard to divorce that from quality. When I see something like this not actually get a lot of views, I'm like, oh, I guess it wasn't that good after all. So I don't know, that kind of sours my opinion of it a bit, which it shouldn't. I thought it was, when I published it, I was like, oh, this is amazing. I thought I made a good video. Which, yeah, let's see what do people say. Keep it up. Look at that. Yeah, good comments, I guess. But where would I put that one? It's probably a B tier. I think in terms of editing and everything, and even not the points. I think the points of the Mushoku Tensei one are better, but the editing here and just the tightness of the 2 minutes, I thought it was a novel, interesting concept. I put it in B tier. Then I have my Utena Rewatch. Let's quickly get up part of it. We're not going to watch the whole thing. I completely spelled that wrong. So 2 episodes, interesting. Let's listen to it. This was my first solo, talking about points. My only other solo thing here was the Doctor Who review, but in that case, I don't have any notes. I'm just thinking off the top of my head. This one I had notes, so it felt a bit weird. Like there's always this discrepancy when it comes to unscripted content where I'll record something, and when I'm recording, I'm like, oh, this is so terrible. I'm like saying all this nonsense and and I got no real points to say, and people can tell I'm just reading my notes and there's like nothing original and I'm not thinking off the top of my head or whatever. And then I watch the video and I'm like, oh, you know what? Not bad. Like it always turns out better than I expect. Even this right now, I think it's going to be terrible, but maybe when I upload it, it won't be terrible. But let's listen to part of it. It also got a surprising number of views, 271, because Utena is very small.
Well, hello everyone, and welcome to my Revolutionary Girl Utena Rewatch.
So this is a Google Slides PowerPoint presentation thing where I just have a bunch of images and I step through it. I think while I was recording, I stepped through it with the arrow keys, but anyway.
So this video is going to cover the first 2 episodes of the anime, and I'm just going to be talking about everything that comes to mind because I'm trying to understand exactly what happens in this anime. So to start off with my background, so I started watching back in July of last year, so July of 2021.
So you know what, it's not that bad. Like I have some interesting points I think to bring up, but let's listen to a random.
Alright, cool. Symbolism, cool. Utena is node with symbolism, I imagine. Has a lot of it, and that was a cool little one that I actually picked up on. So those are all the characters in here in the first episode, but there's also...
I wonder if the future versions or future videos could benefit from music or something. It is quite quiet.
The school itself. So I'd never noticed this.
Or even like, it's kind of weird, but like if I added sound effects, I don't know, it could be interesting. What did I say at the end? Like, oh, get ready for part 3 or whatever.
And the literal and the plot and the lore to me just, it isn't like logical. Granted, the music and stuff, and I like watching it, but I don't think I've really understood anything more than I did last time. I may have noticed a few more subtle things, like the symbols of the roses, and I don't know, a few like the sunlit garden, but overall I think I'm still very confused and I'm looking forward to watching more. So see you next time, I guess.
And then pin comment, no real schedule for this rewatch series. Whenever I watch a few episodes, I'll upload a new video. And guess what? I didn't watch any more episodes. Oh no, oh god, I'm so excited about this. So much Utena content. Well, you know what? Don't worry. I will upload them next year. All right. So that Utena video, solo unscripted, not bad. It's not as bad as the Arcane video. Worse than the Doctor Who video. I'd put it in B tier. Oh, here we go. The best video I have ever made and ever will make. My Mikasa video. Look at this thumbnail. Initially, the thumbnail was something very different. This is my greatest thumbnail I've ever made. I thought it would be genius. Everyone's going to be drawn their attention to this. If there was one video I could like give the most views, it would be this one. It's my favorite video. It's the best video, best editing, best music, best point. The best length is only 6.5 minutes. It's about the anime, you know, it should target people. I guess, no, it's not really about the anime. I guess I used the anime footage at one point. But yeah, it's got headaches, you know. People are like, it's got a good title. Why does Mikasa have headaches? Why does she have headaches, you know? Best thing I've ever made. But here we go. Let's listen to this magnum opus of mine.
Throughout Attack on Titan, Mikasa has a bunch of headaches, and a lot of
Look at that editing, you know. Oh my goodness.
people seem to be confused as to why they happen. From my perspective, they certainly aren't the byproduct of her Ackerman genes, and there's no convincing evidence that they're a symptom of Mikasa resisting a memory wipe. And contrary to popular belief, they're not even triggered by Ymir watching the world through Mikasa's eyes. The reason for their existence is very clear, so let's get straight to it. And for that, we have to go back to when the 2 men attempted to kidnap Mikasa's mother.
Jesus, there was so much panel animation for this, my goodness.
In the process of kidnapping Mikasa's mother, the 2 kidnappers wind up killing both her parents.
Yes, Minty pointed out it's not 2 kidnappers, it's 3 kidnappers. Makes sense.
Scared little Mikasa, seeing the sudden deaths of her parents.
I don't want to like brag about it. I really liked I don't know, the just subtle movement of the head. I thought that worked really
right
well.
in front of her eyes, stands frozen in shock. One of the kidnappers, a bit panicked from their plan to kidnap
This is a pretty bad like animation.
Mikasa's mother having gone wrong, decide to kidnap Mikasa instead. One of them picks her up by the shirt and
Another, just the subtle like small animations that I really liked.
gives her a solid punch to the head, knocking her out. They carry her away to a cabin and she wakes up with a pounding headache. She's lost her entire family and is laying on the cabin floor, cold, alone, and completely empty.
Now, yeah, making the bubbles get bigger when you talk about them, that's something I might use going forward. I think it worked pretty well.
She's so emotionally lost that she hasn't even shed a single tear throughout this entire series of events. This terrible feeling of pure emptiness and pain at the loss of her family buries itself deep into her mind, intertwined with the memory of this pounding headache. And so, being knocked to the ground by the kidnapper was where her headaches first began, and future experiences that force the recollection of this trauma are what trigger the psychosomatic headaches that echo throughout the rest of her life. So what experiences exactly trigger the recollection of this trauma? Is it the fear of pain, or the feeling of being cold? It's actually neither of these. The recollection of her trauma is triggered by Mikasa thinking she is losing people she cares about, losing her family for a second time. She gets a headache after the death of Carla, after thinking that Eren's died in the
It took a long time to make sure this is every single appearance of a headache that Mikasa ever has in the entire story.
Battle of Trust. After seeing the female
If you find another one that isn't in this list, then please let me know, because I'd be surprised.
Titan eat Eren in the Forest of the Giant Trees, after learning that Eren was taken by Reiner and Bertolt after their fight at All Rose, after seeing Armin lying on the rooftop, burnt to a crisp by the Colossal Titan, and finally in the midst of the Battle of Heaven and Earth, once when she believes Armin's explosion killed Eren, and again toward the end of the battle, where it seems she is going to lose every friend that is still alive, and will be forced to kill Eren to prevent that from happening, being forced to lose her family for a second time. Now there's two other instances, and they're the two headaches that are caused by Mikasa's interactions with Louise, the little girl she saves back in the Battle for Trust. Right after saving her and exchanging a military salute, Mikasa
Oof, that animation took way too long. You see it for 1 second, it doesn't even look that good.
back in the Battle for
But like Mikasa like saluting,
Trust.
I think.
Right after saving her and exchanging a
Look at that.
military salute, Mikasa gets a headache. The reason for this is pretty straightforward. On seeing Louise and her mother happily alive and together in a situation that could have easily resulted in their deaths, Mikasa is reminded of her own personal trauma. And many years later, when Louise is imprisoned for leaking information about Eren's arrest, she salutes Mikasa once more, reminding her of the first time she saved her, and hence, once again,
I think that's also a novel point I haven't seen anyone bring up, that in this scene the salute is what she's calling back to. And I think the reason is that, from memory, I don't think the salute happens in the anime. Maybe it does, I don't know. Maybe it's less obvious.
reminding her of the first time she saved her, and hence, once again, the kidnapping incident. This time showing us through a creepier, more distant framing of Eren, that Mikasa is afraid that she may be losing the Eren she thought she knew, the warm young boy who saved her from her trauma, and gave her a new family all those years ago.
I don't know if it's here, but there were some bits where I had to like cut out these things because they were distracting, but anyway.
So Mikasa gets headaches due to recalling her trauma, and what tends to cause the recollection of this trauma are emotionally stressful.
Oof. I think this works really well, seeing all of this and like emphasizing that it's like all these examples that I brought together. It's kind of like an Alt-Shift-X kind of thing. But it took so long to align them and crop them to make them so they're all like aligned perfectly here. But I think it's worth it. It looks really cool.
Situations where she feels she is about to lose people she cares about. Sure, you can go ahead and inject theories about resisting memory wipes, and that maybe Ymir is looking inside her head only at these very specific moments, but that's all just extra stuff that you can choose to believe if you want, but it doesn't negate the core of these headaches, that they all stem from Mikasa's recollection of her trauma. So there we go, we've addressed the title of the video, with a straightforward answer as to why Mikasa's specific
Oops, that's the original thumbnail. There we go.
headaches. But Mikasa is a character within a story, so yeah, she gets psychosomatic headaches, but these headaches should serve a narrative purpose, and the way I see it, they most certainly do. So now let's flash forward to the Battle of Heaven and Earth. Levi's words echo in Mikasa's mind. We're the only ones left who can kill Eren. The headaches begin beating her down, reminding her of the trauma of losing her family, chaining her back from killing Eren, the person she loves, the one who saved her from the tragic incident all those years ago by giving her a new family.
Yeah, I think I edited out some effects in here.
These headaches remind her that without Eren's help in moving on from her tragedy, she is just a cold, empty girl lying on a cold cabin floor, alone and destined to remain that way forever.
I also like the way some of the rhyming and stuff. I think it works really well.
So now she is forced to make the ultimate choice, whether to listen to her headaches, cling to Eren, and bury herself in fear of her trauma, or to face the headaches, end Eren's life, and use her own strength to take the
Yeah, I think the only issue I have with this video is what's happening right now, which is the transition of the music. It was very tough to do, and I don't think I did it very well.
first solid step beyond her fears, all on her own. And I guess we all know the choice she ends up making. She struggles her way through the headaches and acts symbolic of pushing through the trauma of losing her family,
Here's the rhyming.
using her own strength to move on from past tragedy, and choosing to end Eren's bloodshed for the sake of humanity. So now let's talk about our founder Ymir. King Fritz killed her parents.
I think like the next like minute from here is where I feel like it's like it captures my attention listening to it now, where hopefully it'll capture other
losing her
people's
family,
attention.
using her own strength to move on from past tragedy, and choosing to end
Like if I was to make a YouTube short of this, it would be like from here onwards, just to hear like the Ymir stuff. Because this is like in my opinion, this is the cohesive like tying together of what Ymir is, what she wants, how she relates with Mikasa, and why she's paralleled with Mikasa and not Historia, and why it is tying in really well with the final chapter of Attack on Titan. Like it all comes in together, and hopefully when we get to the anime, it'll be more clear and people will like kind of see it this way. I don't know.
Eren's bloodshed
Hopefully people will watch this video. That'd be great.
for the sake of humanity. So now let's talk about our founder Ymir. King Fritz killed her parents, burnt her village, cut out her tongue, and caused unfathomable trauma that tormented her entire immortal existence. And through the alternate history panel in the final chapter of Attack on Titan, we see the life that Ymir wished she could have lived. A life where she was able to move on from her love for the wicked King Fritz. Through her saddened eyes as she conjures an image of this wishful past, we learn that she is someone who regretted the steps she took through life. But up until this moment, she knew of no other path through life, as love, no matter how nightmarish, no matter how one-sided, was the only vehicle for happiness she had ever been exposed to throughout her entire traumatic life. This love is what she desperately clung to as she buried herself in her trauma, leading to a life she would come to regret. Without it, she was just a sad, empty slave, living a lonely, tormented life. But this young girl with all-seeing sight watched Mikasa as she lived her life, and saw a woman with whom she could truly empathize conjure the strength to move on where she never could. Through seeing Mikasa's choice to use her own...
I made sure to emphasize Mikasa's choice, because that's like what everyone complains about in like in chapter 139, where they're like, where Eren's talking about, oh, it was Mikasa's choice, you know? I still don't know what the outcome of her choice is. And it's like, this is the choice. Like, this is what everyone is missing for some reason. That she's choosing to move on from her trauma and kill Eren. But anyway.
The empty slave, living a lonely, tormented life. But this young girl with all-seeing sight watched Mikasa as she lived her life, and saw a woman with whom she could truly empathize conjure the strength to move on where she never could. Through seeing Mikasa's choice to use her own strength to push through her trauma, Ymir sees it's possible for her to move on from her own trauma too, finally appearing as a woman and making the power of the Titans, the symbolic embodiment of her trauma, disappear from the world. And so, why does Mikasa have headaches?
Yeah, that is the answer, right? That is why Mikasa has headaches, and that it all ties in. It's all coming together with Ymir and everything. What an ending Attack on Titan has.
Ymir sees it's possible for her to move on from her own trauma too, finally appearing as a woman and making the power of the Titans, the symbolic embodiment of her trauma, disappear from the world. And so, why does Mikasa have headaches? So that Attack on Titan can tell the story of a traumatized, empty girl using her own strength to move forward from tragedy. If Mikasa can do it, and Ymir can do it, then so can you.
I don't know about that last line.
But Attack on Titan...
Like, it's fine. Like, I think it ties in with, like, it's like a comment of me saying like why a story has a theme, it's so it can teach you a lesson or something, but I don't know, it's kind of cringe.
Can tell the story of a traumatized, empty girl using her own strength to move forward from tragedy. If Mikasa can do it, and Ymir can do it, then so can you.
Then so can you. I don't know, it's fine. But there was one other thing I was going to talk about. Oh yeah, this, like, I hated how it always bothered me where
Fritz killed her parent.
Like, the timing that I do to make these panels bigger when I talk, it just feels a bit off, you know.
Burnt her village, cut out her tongue, and caused unfathomable trauma.
Yeah, I don't know. Anyway, I wish this got more views. I think it is of all my other videos, it is the most viewed, which isn't Mushoku Tensei, which I'm glad, but I really hope, maybe hopefully when the next season comes out, more people will watch this. Like, if there was one video I could promote or something, it would definitely be this one. I think it has the strongest idea, it's the best executed. It's just the best video I've made, I think. It's S tier. Alright. Now the Gudrun video. So this was part of Vinland's Finest, which is, it was fantastic. A great idea by Jarky Bacon to bring together a bunch of Vinland Saga YouTubers to make a video on their favorite chapter. Or not on their favorite chapter, but on one chapter in particular. And I chose chapter 106 and made this video.
In chapter 106 of Vinland Saga, we see a young girl at a beach on Greenland, in awe of the fascinating things brought from ships that come from beyond her world. On this particular day, she asks a wise, experienced sailor where it is that he calls home.
I wish I animated Leaf's face there a bit more.
And in response, he sketches a map of the known world in the sand, a world observed by this little girl, too big to fit on the little beach. For the rest of that day, the girl gazed at this
This thing has so many moving parts, it took so long to
world
do.
Engraved in sand, pondering the unbounded freedom of the world beyond her horizon. But a world engraved in sand is hardly engraved at all, and with time, this idyllic dream was washed further and further away. For in the world in which this young girl was raised, a woman does not become a sailor. And so, on one particular day, 4 men plan an exciting journey to an exotic land, a new story of infinite possibilities. But on seeing all this excitement, all the girl wishes for is to be rid of the memory of the world that she saw.
Oof, the rhyming, love it. I should probably mute this so I don't get claimed. Wait, if I have it in this video, I won't get claimed. It's all good. But you get the point. So I show the rest of the chapter. I animated like, what, 9-10 pages. Yeah, here we go. And then zoom in on this last one.
So this video was made as part of Vinland's Finest, a collaborative effort by a bunch of creators to make videos about one particular chapter of Vinland Saga. So if you found this video interesting, then check out the playlist in the description.
So yeah, so I guess the thing to say about this is that I had a very limited time frame to make it, so I was like, what's something I can do quickly, but still make it like it looks like a lot of effort went into it, and it certainly a lot of effort did go into this, but it wasn't in the scripting. But yeah, the thing is that I also, like, this whole video was based around the song in the background, because like the crescendo here is basically, I was like, oh, what can I build a video around this bit here? Wait, let's listen to it again.
Seeing all this excitement, all the girl wishes for is to be rid of the memory of the world that she saw.
Baltic Sea, yeah, and also you probably can't tell, but I actually edited this song quite a bit, like clipped together different sections to kind of make it tie up with what was showing on screen properly, or not what's showing on screen, but to kind of make it so it feels a bit better when you're listening to this whole video. But yeah, so overall, yeah, it's got a bunch of supportive comments. I was glad. I think the first, like up until here, like up until the ending, until the Vinland's Finest thing comes up, I think this is the best video I've made. Like it's easily an S tier. But then it's only a minute long, and the rest of it is really cringe, I think, where I'm like, oh, let's show the whole chapter, let's go through every page. It's all animated. And then, I don't know, so it feels a bit short. I'd move it down from A tier to S tier. It's probably less than the actual read-through itself, less than that video, probably less than that. I'd put it there. That's a pretty good spot for it, I think. So A tier, middle of A tier. Oh boy. Then, in my Vinland craze here, where I'm doing a bunch of Vinland stuff, I did a Vinland Digest video. Let's bring that up. And when you search for Vinland Digest, does it come up? Oh, it does. All right. Yeah, so this was me going through a bunch of Vinland Saga videos that I'd seen. In this case, it's of people that I've like know, or not know, but like I've seen them comment on my videos and interact with me before. But this was fun. Like it was fun. Like I think it came together decently well in the end, but it's just tough. Like for a few reasons. Firstly, it's tough to when you're watching a video, trying to make sure you're absorbing all the points so that you can accurately reflect them later on in this video. Like I don't want to misrepresent someone's video, so it just makes it more stressful when you're watching the initial video itself, like someone else's video. And you have to make notes, and you also have to, like, when you watch a YouTube video, you don't, at least me, like, it doesn't stick in my mind all the details of it, so it's kind of like you want to watch the video and then record soon after. And for some of these videos, it might have been a week between when I watched the actual creator's video and then made this video here. But I think it came together decently well. The only thing like holding me back from doing more of this is the fact that it feels bad, to kind of critique someone's video. Like I just like saying that everyone's videos are just great. And it feels bad when you have to point out something where I'm like, oh, I didn't really agree with this. Oh, I thought there was a better way of doing this. It feels bad. But it was fun. I would give this, it's B tier, I think. Yeah, probably under my ranking Doctor Who, but above the Utena. It was a fun thing. I think it might be better if I frame it less as a critique and more of just like me talking about things I've seen, and seeing if there's anyone else in the comments who might like watch it and then give a comment on what they thought about it, maybe. I don't know. Next up, the Mushoku Tensei tier list. I mean, it's a tier list. Let's quickly go to it. I think the best part about this video is the thumbnail. Like, it looks to me, this might be my best, it's definitely not my best thumbnail. My best thumbnail is the Mikasa Headaches one. But this one looks like professional, like, oh, a big time YouTuber made this one. They even put the characters with white outlines on top of the blurred S tier ranking thing. But the video itself is fine. Like, I wasn't initially going to make this, but I was just going to tweet out, oh, here's my Mushoku Tensei tier list. But I was like, oh, why don't I just record it while I do it? So let's listen to like a few seconds. Goodness. It's been a while. What is the Renoa Academy? Listen to me forgetting Mushoku Tensei.
And she's like bullying linear.
Look at this: Norn, Rudius, Paul, not Zenith. Jesus, Claire. What a list I have! My goodness. But this was fun. Mushoku Tensei is always fun. There's so many characters in Mushoku Tensei, and they all stand on their own. Like they could anyone in S tier, an A tier, maybe B tier even. They could all they could have their own story, like their own novel if they wanted. They're also great. But it's just a ranking video. I'd put it above Utena, but it's a B tier video. Then we have Onolita Ari, all the anime I've seen, part 3. We're getting right to the end here. So let's listen to it. I mean, the only difference here, I think this might be the worst of the 3. Not because of the shows I've covered or anything, but because the narration was a bit over the top, I think. But I think this was the first video, because it is very long. It's maybe my longest scripted video, 40 minutes. I think it is. And to edit the audio, I used Descript, which is fantastic. If you make long form content, absolutely you should use Descript. What it does is it takes your video or your audio that you've recorded, it will transcribe it into text, and then instead of like cutting up the audio in Audacity, you can like select the text and like delete it. And like if you want to replace what you said in a certain section, you can overdub it, like where you'll select the text and record a new recording, or you can even use AI to like model your voice and then replace text by just typing it, and it'll speak with your voice, and that's really good. I think I used it in this video at one point to change a date that I said. But yeah, Descript is a time saver and a lifesaver. But let's listen to part of it. So my overly emotive narration, which I'm not a fan of in this video.
So this video is part 3 in an ongoing series of videos where I talk about everything that comes to mind.
See how emotive I am and engaged? I don't like it.
Every anime that I've seen.
What happened to that guy who would speak in a monotone voice, you know, in that first Attack on Titan video?
In the order that I watch them. For the most part, I won't include any massive spoilers, and if I want to talk about...
let's listen to something random. JoJo's.
Anything that says...
Actually, you know what? I want a Madoka. There we go. Because I chose a lot of... Like, I specifically wanted to choose good pictures for Madoka, because there's so many good pictures.
A girl is given the opportunity to be granted any wish she desires in exchange for becoming a magical girl. Madoka Magica follows the story of Madoka as she faces this opportunity and navigates her life as an adolescent girl.
And Madoka has absolutely no music that you can find on the internet, on YouTube, that isn't copyright blocked. So this music you're listening to right now is a Flife soundtrack, and not from Madoka.
So one night, I felt like it was time to watch a new anime. So I decided to look up a bunch of Reddit threads for what people would rank as their top 10 anime of all time, and one anime that tended to be pretty common in all of these lists was Madoka Magica.
But anyway, you get the point. It's more emotive than last time, but eventually when you've watched like 10 minutes of this, you're kind of like, oh, I'm back into it. It's engaging. Look at that Chica eyeball thing. That was cool. Where was that? Yeah, look at that. Isn't Kaguya-sama great? Come on, go to the next frame. I want to see the close-up.
And that's the pacing. Every episode would absolutely...
Cool. Lighting, eyes, awesome. Part 3. It's the worst of the 3 parts. No, it's not. It's still as good as the other ones. I think it's just worse. All right, now we have the great, amazing Black Sails rewatch. What a fun time this was. What a great series. Fantastic rewatch that was, we ran into a bit of troubles at the end with timing. I think we recorded the first 3, like 3 weeks in a row-ish. Not perfectly, but something like that. And the 4th one, we had to wait so long, and Kyle watched the whole thing in like a few days, and I'd watched everything except the last episode, and then I had to have a surgery and the recovery, and it took so long to finally get that last part out. But what a great series. This is easily A tier. It's better than the Vinland Saga. I don't think, sentimentally, I think the Vinland Saga will always be my favorite, just because it was the first, and it was longest, and it was every week and for 12 weeks or whatever. But damn, is this Black Sails rewatch is awesome. Go watch the show. Go listen to our rewatch. It's a lot of fun. Thumbnails were great. Where are they? Yeah, I had a lot of fun choosing them and brightening them up and putting the saturation so high, you know. We also got a bunch of like really long comments, which was cool. Like, look at this. Look at all these. Look at all these, you know, my goodness. Amazing. But yeah, that was a fun time. I think it's always it's so fun doing unscripted content, you know, when you're talking to other people and you've both I guess the difference is that in the Vinland Saga one, it was me like coming up with all my own like reading interpretations because it was my first time through, and then talking to Bacon about it, who's seen it all. In this case, we are both rewatching it, so it's like it's a different dynamic, but a really fun dynamic. I think it would also be really fun to do something where, like me and the other person, we both haven't seen it. That would be really great as well. But yeah, that's it. It's tough. I think unscripted content, it's hard to compare to the scripted content. Like if I compare these two to my like Mushoku Tensei one, like I think clearly this is more like cohesive and I have a solid point and everything, but I just had so much fun making these. So I'll put them up here. The Great Attack on Titan Reread, another like, it's so fun to make. What can I say about it that I haven't already? These were long. I think these were less fun purely because it took so long to do it. But I still had an absolute blast talking about it. I talk a lot, like I would say, because there's 3 of us in here, I talk a lot less than when I do, like, I think I talked about, I don't know if I included this in this video, but when there's 2 of us, it's a lot, like I can talk for half the time, like it feels fine with me. But when there's more people, I find it like, I don't know, I just talk less. So in these, like, I definitely talk less than a third of the time, maybe like 10 to 15%. But it's a lot of fun. Attack on Titan, obviously, it's my favorite manga. I have a lot to say about it. So it's fun to bounce off like my reread ideas with the other guys. But where would I put it? I think it's definitely, it's still an A tier, but it's less than these two. I think I would put it at the bottom of A tier. It's a great reread. I think it's just the fact that I talk less in it. But yeah. Oh boy, then so what happened was that I played Elden Ring a long time ago, many months ago, and beat it. And I beat Melania. And for one of the sessions where I was fighting Melania, and it ended up being the session where I won, I recorded about an hour of gameplay. But it was terrible. The sound, like, you could hardly hear what I was saying. My volume in OBS was way too low, and the desktop audio was so high. So I just like scrapped it, and I was like, oh, I'll upload it on my like private channel to show my real life friends, and I did, and they saw it, and it was cool. And then eventually I thought, why don't I like chop up this 1 hour footage, use AI to kind of separate the background noise and the speech, which I ended up doing, and it worked out decently well, and you can kind of hear me now, like if we listen to it, and I think it turned out okay. It's kind of cringe, like the title is cringe. It's cringe hearing me like be so invested in the game, but you know, it is what it is. Let's listen to it a little bit. You can probably hear the like how it sounds a bit weird because I did separate the audio in the background. But...
At least I survived that one. That one's great.
Is that echo? What the hell?
No.
Anyway, you get the point. That's probably a C tier, honestly. It's better than the Arcane. No, is it my worst? I think this is certainly my worst video now that I think about it. But it's not. It's not terrible. It could be worse. It was just a fun thing. I'm like, oh, I'll just upload it. How many views did it get? Honestly, I didn't even see. Wait. If it has more than 100 views, I'd be shocked. 32 views. Yeah, that makes sense. Any comments? Oh, I actually got a comment. My goodness. 0 deaths. You were truly the damn right I am. All right. My latest actual scripted video. The Forgotten Paul Rudy Argument. A video that was initially meant to come out in like January 8th, I think, or something. Look at my calendar. I made a thumbnail for this that was terrible. It was so much different from what I used here. It was just basically Paul's face like zoomed in. It was like the first thumbnail I like made after my first Attack on Titan video. So this is like, this video was months and months and months in the making. But I finally got around to it. And this is purely edited in Premiere. That was my first time. Because other than Premiere, every other video is edited in After Effects, basically. But let's hear this one out.
On one sunny afternoon, Rudius is out exploring.
I really liked it. I tweeted this out, but I really like the narration in this. Like, I'm not too emotive and I'm not too monotone. Comes together pretty well, I think.
His local village, when suddenly he runs into a group of bullies who are pelting mud balls at a young boy because his green hair marks him as a demon. As one of the bullies goes to escalate the violence by
I was going to spoil something. Don't worry.
Rudius hurriedly intervenes.
Because this is a purely, like, I didn't have a spoiler warning or anything. This is purely an anime thing, so I won't spoil anything.
By using his magic to throw water balls at the bullies. Frustrated by Rudius's challenge, the bullies walk away from the situation. After Rudius uses his magic to clean the young boy, the two spend the rest of their day together.
Boy, is it so easy to edit an anime thing like this, where you're just describing what's happening and you just get to show the scene, you know? It's so much better.
Sitting under a tree on a hill and practicing magic. With the day gone by, Rudius returns home to find his father Paul furious, demanding that he apologize for punching a kid while...
This scene, which is the focus of the entire video, the Forgotten Paul Rudy argument and why it's so great, has a copyright block on it, and I didn't realize until after I had made the video and exported it. So I went through maybe 5 or 6 attempts at like chopping up the scene and getting rid of bits and making bits longer and slowing them and scaling them and whatever, and eventually I finally got one that uploaded, but I was ready to give up. I was like, oh, I'm gonna scrap this entire video because I can't upload it, but thank God. I should have, like, going forward, I will always check if, like, I'm focusing on a scene, can I actually upload that scene? But anyway.
was out in the town. We know that this never happened, that a lie or misinterpretation of the bullying conflict had reached Paul's ear, and that Rudius was completely 100% in the right for defending the victim with his harmless water balls. Nonetheless, Paul chastises Rudius, not letting him explain his side of the story at all, while preaching values that Rudius should be following. That when you've done something wrong, the first thing you do is apologize. This is not wisdom from a wise character that is supposed to resonate with the audience. In this context, we are unequivocally positioned to be on Rudius' side. He has done nothing wrong, and is being unfair.
I also recorded all the video or visuals for this in 4K because I have a 4K monitor, and that was very dumb. And I edited it all in 4K, so it was very laggy and stuff when I was editing because I thought, oh, it'll look great. Then I realized that Crunchyroll doesn't have 4K videos, so everything was in 1080p anyway.
Fairly chastised. Rudy retorts to Paul that adults have it easy. They can yell at a kid before he even has a chance to explain himself. Then Paul hits Rudy, and the dynamic completely changes. Paul is shocked.
I tried to time up that piano with the flicker to Rudy's face here, you know, crazy editing.
Has a chance to explain himself. Then Paul hits Rudy, and the dynamic completely changes. Paul is shocked by what he did, and Rudy calmly reprimands him for it, telling his father how he has worked so hard to earn his trust, and that shouting and hitting him before he can explain himself is a terrible thing to do. Paul, starting to clamor in an attempt to salvage his side of the argument, finally asks Rudius to explain his side of the story. In response, Rudius sarcastically and condescendingly retorts that the next time he sees 3 kids gang up on one helpless victim, he'll join in so that everyone knows what kind of people are in the Grey Rat family. At this point, Paul realizes that he has completely fumbled this entire confrontation and apologizes to Rudius. This Paul-Rudy argument is the most interesting scene in the Buena Village arc of Mushoku Tensei, but it tends not to get the appreciation it deserves, and is largely overshadowed by the more famous Paul-Rudy argument much later in the story. So in this video, I'm going to try and convince you of why it's so great. The first and most obvious reason is the catharsis. We've all been in situations as kids where adults put their foot down, even though you know you've done nothing wrong, but they just won't listen to you. And Rudius is able to turn around such a situation and chastise the adult for their ill behavior. It's a joy to watch, and it's very cathartic, but the scene is certainly much more than that. There's also a unique inversion of the father-son dynamic. We follow the perspective of the 5-year-old son, whose mental age of 39 exceeds that of his 24-year-old father. This son imbues a lesson on the father about hearing people out before jumping to conclusions, a lesson that would usually be expected of the father to his son. Framing Rudius as the symbolic father, the purveyor of important lessons onto the young and flawed Paul, serves 2 important roles. Firstly, it creates the character of Paul, who up until this point was essentially a placeholder figure in the backdrop of Rudius' life, a cardboard cutout of a stereotyped dad in a fantasy world. This new framing of Paul as the flawed figure, closer to his son than to Rudius' father, thrusts Paul into becoming a real character, who will have his own arc in the grander story.
So that point about Paul, this scene creating Paul, was my original thesis for this video. That's why the thumbnail was Paul's face and everything, and I think I still stand by it, where it's this scene creates Paul. I absolutely stand by this. And I still remember the first time I watched it, this was the scene that kind of got me into Mushoku Tensei, where I was like, oh, there's something interesting going on here. A very unique dynamic that's only present in this show that I've ever, out of everything I've seen. Anyway, let's keep going.
Throughout this argument, we see him display nuanced emotion for the first time ever. His expression, a mix of anger, panic, sadness, and regret, conveys that he is someone who is dealing with something internally, and it clues us into the fact that there's more depth to him than we had assumed up to this point. And on revisiting the scene with the additional context of the rest of the season, and even more context through his post-argument point of view chapter in the light novel, this depth is very clear. We see a young father who had his first child unplanned at the age of 19, who has silently been struggling with feelings of inadequacy in raising an intellectual prodigy of a son that he feels unqualified to be a father of.
Yeah, borrowing that point from the light novel, where it's made explicit, whereas in the anime it's not that explicit, you have to kind of figure it out.
A man who hated his own father for being too stern and prideful, and ran away from home as a result, now forced to see the mirror of his father in his own actions toward Rudius in this argument, with the irony being that he only acted so sternly because he finally felt like he had the chance to prove himself a good father for once. He was glad to be given an opportunity to prove himself.
Hear the looping music, because I didn't want to try and find more music.
Self-qualified as a parent by disciplining Rudius, but through his attempt to do so, he feels the echo of his own father, and feels even worse than if he had done nothing at all. The scene's characterization of Paul as a struggling, flawed, and immature person, alongside Paul's retrospective reflection on his mishandling of the situation, firmly establishes him as a...
Oh boy, just listening to these words that I'm saying, it took me so long to get the right balance between clarity and emotiveness, and boy,
point of view character, reframing all of his past appearances and forever changing how we see him going forward. This is the scene that created Paul Greyrat, one of the best characters in the entire Mushoku Tensei story. Now, putting aside the creation of Paul, the inverse son-father dynamic also serves another purpose. It establishes a baseline to highlight Rudius' stagnation.
Oh boy, so this was a point that I also wanted to bring up initially, but boy, was it a struggle to kind of piece this all together. And even, I don't know if I did a very good job, because there are I was in a discussion with someone here that eventually I'll get back to and answer them. But yeah, it's a tough situation to kind of piece this all together in a way that can be conveyed accurately. But
6 years
I think I did an okay job, I think.
after the initial bullying conflict, Rudy attempts to save a young boy from being kidnapped. But as it turns out, this young boy is none other
Wait.
than the young bully Somal from all those years ago.
I thought I was a genius for putting this together, that this is Samal from all those years ago. But I completely forgot that at the end of the Paul Rudy fight scene, it's revealed that this is Samal. But yeah, anyway, maybe the novelty here is that people won't realize that Samal was the bully. But then again, I think it gets made very clear in the anime that it's a bully. So it's kind of like, I guess this isn't that interesting after all. Like, at least for me, who was like, oh, I'm a genius, I figured something out. Anyway.
The kid whose false story of Rudius attacking him misled Paul and seeded the initial.
Oh, there's so many small details in a light novel that are just great. Like the fact that, I don't know if we find this out in the anime, but this is Samal's mum, and she doesn't care about Samal's injury here. Like, maybe it's even a fake injury or something, but whenever he gets injured, she will just use it as an excuse to see Paul because she has a crush on him. It's like a very cute, like, character thing that we don't see in the anime. At least I don't remember from the anime.
Paul Rudy argument. Samal's presence at this much later point in the narrative creates a symbolic bridge between the argument those many years ago and the far more famous Paul Rudy argument in Millis following the teleportation incident.
Much more famous.
Confused as to why Rudius hasn't seen his message, Paul asks him to explain his journey following the teleportation incident. Rudius, not paying any mind to the tension in the room, or Paul's increasingly angry disposition in response to his words, retells his journey through the demon continent, framing his retelling through a joyous lens. Midway through the story, Paul snaps and accuses Rudius of playing around on his journey. He is clearly angry for some reason unknown to Rudius, yet despite this, he still gives Rudius the chance to explain himself, by asking him why he didn't seek out the other victims of the teleportation incident. Paul has clearly internalized the lesson that the first argument taught him all those years ago. In response to Paul's inquiry, Rudius has no good answer, so Paul starts digging into him, mocking Rudius for using the teleportation incident as an opportunity to get with Eris. At this point, Rudius snaps right back into the sarcastic and condescending approach to arguing that he used back in their first argument.
So that wasn't... I think I handled that shift in music decently well there. Where's here it again?
So Paul starts digging into him, mocking Rudius for using the teleportation incident as an opportunity to get with Eris. At this point, Rudius snaps right back into the sarcastic and condescending approach to arguing that he used back in their first argument, accusing Paul of cheating on Zenith and Lilia by sleeping with the women around him, an accusation that, unbeknownst to Rudius, is blatantly false. Rudius very clearly believes himself to be on the right side of this argument, once again seeing himself as the symbolic father in their dynamic, teaching Paul a lesson about hypocrisy. Then Paul hits Rudy, but this time, Paul doesn't back down, because Rudy is no longer the metaphoric.
I think the other interesting thing is that the original title for this was, like, the entire focus of this video when I wanted to make it recently, like in this final, like, revision of this script, the focus was going to be on metatextual hypocrisy, and how if you support Rudius in this argument, then you're a hypocrite because you're betraying the thing that he was trying to teach Paul initially in that first argument. And the title was going to be like, oh, when the metatext makes hypocrites of us all, or something like that, or like we're all a bunch of metatextual hypocrites. Maybe I'll use that in the title later on, but that was the initial conceit of this. I kind of changed it here to focus more on making the parallel to more of like a character thing. I don't know, but it's maybe someone will find that interesting.
Father in their relationship. He isn't the wiser person pointing out Paul's hypocrisy in this situation. Rudy is the one who fails to inquire as to the struggles Paul has gone through. He doesn't give Paul the benefit of the doubt like he had told Paul to give him all those years ago. If he had inquired as to Paul's perspective, then he would have realized that Paul's disgruntled and snarky response to Rudius's joyous retelling of his epic fairy tale on the demon continent was quite justified. Teleported to the middle of an open field with nothing but the clothing on his back, Paul became a dependable father. He kept Norn safe and raised her all on his own, all the while doing his best to save those lost during the teleportation incident. He became a reliable leader of a company trying to return those displaced during the mass displacement, and amassed a mass of people who loved and respected him. But at the same time, he sank deeper and deeper into depression and fell harshly into alcoholism as he seemingly failed on every turn to reunite his family that was instantly broken by the natural disaster equivalent that was the teleportation incident.
I kind of like that long sentence that ends with that, like, natural disaster equivalent that was the teleportation incident. I think that works well.
In time, he sank deeper and deeper into depression and fell...
Like, it's a very long sentence, like a compounding sentence, but it builds up to a interesting point.
Partially into alcoholism, as he seemingly failed on every turn to reunite his family that was instantly broken by the natural disaster equivalent that was the teleportation incident. He became a good...
Like, it's not even the point that I'm making that's good. I think it's the, not the rhyming, but, like, I don't know if it's the prose. There's some word, like the rhythm of the way that you word that kind of, like, appeals to me in a way.
Sank deeper and deeper into depression and fell harshly into alcoholism as he seemingly failed on every turn to reunite his family that was instantly broken by the natural disaster equivalent that was the teleportation incident.
It's like da-da-da-da-da-da-da, da-da-da-da-da-da-da. Like
he became a good father, but at the same time became an understandably very broken man. And Rudius accuses him of betraying the memory of his family, whom he has fought every day to revive. In their first argument, Rudy was the wiser person, using his wit to show Paul that he should listen to Rudius's perspective. He takes it a bit too far with the sarcasm and condescension, but it's excusable because the truth is on Rudius's side. But in this situation, he does what Paul did to him, and doesn't consider his perspective.
Oh, I wanted to talk more about Norn, but I couldn't find a way to tie it into like the thesis here.
Paul took the lesson and internalized it, but Rudius hasn't matured at all.
And Norn is the either the best or second best character in Mushoku.
So that's it. The initial Paul-Rudy argument, all the way back in Buena Village, ripples throughout the remainder of the story. It's cathartic, it has a unique son-father dynamic, creates the character of Paul, and is a great foundation to show that in some aspects, Rudius hasn't grown much at all.
See, that's a good conclusion, right? I didn't make it too explicit. Like it like naturally comes from the last sentence. Like I think that's the best conclusion. But yep, a bunch of comments, another successful, a lot of views on all these Mushoku Tensei videos for some reason. I love it. Mushoku Tensei is great. This is great. I think it's my second best Mushoku Tensei video. Probably below my Toward the Tree on That Hill video. Yeah, I think that's pretty good. Now, the final video is an AMV that I made. Now, this is, what can I even say about this? So, I made the thumbnail for this, which I love this thumbnail. One of my favorite thumbnails I've made, up there with the Mikasa one. I made it ages ago for another AMV-like video. It was going to be an edit like this, but the difference was that it had a framing of, like it was going to be on a CRT TV, like it was going to be like distorted and like there'll be like chromatic aberration. It'd look weird. There was also going to be another song I was going to use, which is, I think it's called Krapa Pedala from Breaking Bad. It's the song that Gale sings. And it was an edit there, but I don't know. I couldn't get it. It was kind of cringe. The song wasn't working. The edit it felt like I was putting too much effort into it, which is like something you don't want to come across like that. So I scrapped it and then I tweeted out, I can't do it anymore. I'm just going to scrap this thumbnail. But you know what? I finished my Mushoku Tensei video. I was in the mood for editing in Premiere, and I was like, you know what? Why didn't I just pick this? And I was listening to this song in the background from it's a Legion song, and I was like, one day I want to use this in a video. What's a video I can use this in? And this AMV came to mind, so let's watch it. Oh, AMV. We can't watch this in 2x speed. There's a lot I like about this. What can I even say? Let's mute it, but like this, like the rotoscoped walking of Zeke paired with like the rotoscope walking of Udo. Like, I don't know, that's something I thought was really neat. I don't like that transition between like the two teams. I wanted to somehow do it, but I was like, how do I do it to make it look smooth? But yeah, it doesn't look that smooth, honestly, does it? And Gabby, I thought this was like a centerpiece of the thing where it's like, what's happening when this goofy music is playing? Gabby's like drunk and cheering. And I hold on it for a bit. I had to put this clip in because it's in the thumbnail, And then this was like the conceit of like why I use this song. It's because there's a contrast between like the goofy happiness or whatever, and then like the sinister undertones of the boom, Oh, fuck, I rewound too much. Wait, let's hear that again. Ready? Oh. And then here we got the three like heads of like Mikasa, Armin, and then was it Gabby? Wait, who is it? Oh, Sasha, yeah. It's like dun 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 dun, Yeah, putting the jacket on, then Louise. There's just something like I find this so fun. Like even just getting the timing right, where you've got these quick flashes, right? Where it's like every scene gets the same amount of time. It's like dun 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 dun. Ready? Wait. 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then you hold on this next scene for a bit, like a little bit extra, And then you go back to the dun dun dun. It's just fun. Dun dun. And then you make the contrast between like the invaders coming in and then the Titans coming in as to the other people. There's a comparison, a parallel. You're crazy. And it's incidental, but like the background noise you hear, here, if you listen, you know, that like thunderish noise, I just think it's like the windmill spinning and there's all these flames. Like, I don't know, it ties it well for me for some reason. And then getting the three faces and ending with Mikasa crying, because Mikasa is the central point of this whole ending, you know? She's the main character of this ending bit. The protagonist, you could say. Yep, this is the best video I've ever made. It's better than the Mikasa one. I enjoyed it the most. It's short, it's edited tightly. It's my favorite video that I've ever made, and probably not ever will make. I'm sure I'll make something good. The Mikasa one has a better point, obviously, but this one, I had so much fun making it, and I think it's, I don't know, I just love it so much. Oh boy, that's it. That's it. I've now watched every single video, a year later for some of these, and it's been great, you know? How's my, am I still recording? Absolutely. Wonder how long this is gonna be. But that's it, here we are, woohoo. If for some reason, if you want to do a tier list, I guess I'll put the link to this in the description or something, but yeah, looking forward to next year. I'll do another one of these, and hopefully we'll have another 26 videos or something, probably hopefully more, and we can reflect on this. But yeah, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed. See you.